The bright sun flooded the sea with blinding light. Somewhere deep inside, the girl was fighting for her life. She slowly opened her eyes, looking up at the flickering sunlight above her. The desire to save her friend Jess turned out to be stronger than a sober calculation of her own strength. It was Iris, her name. She heard the desperate cries of Jess as she sank to the bottom. But the worst was behind her. At the cost of incredible efforts, she pulled her friend out onto the sand. Now Iris lay there, exhausted, just beginning to come to her senses. Her little sister ran to her, asking for forgiveness. They sat on the warm shore, hugging each other tightly. The worst was over. The doctor, after examining Iris, strongly advised her to rest after what she had experienced. The teacher did not hide her pride in the courage of her young student. Iris is only 13. Her world is usually full of carefree games with friends. Life taught her a cruel lesson. Balancing on the edge, she understood a lot. This whole world turned out to be just pages of the darkest thriller. A thriller where all the characters are long dead. And Iris is one of these dead heroines. You will still have to get to know her story better. I won't spoil it. You will also discover a character whose fate is inextricably intertwined with the devil. And yes, he is beautiful, with jet black hair and eyes as red as fresh blood. His name is Theo, and rumor has it that he once massacred an entire orphanage. Our heroine didn't even suspect its existence, which seemed like a blatant injustice. Iris was immersed in reading a curious book, all alone. Her roommate could not understand her strange hobby, but Iris didn't care at all what anyone else thought about it. She firmly believed that all children are innocent until they grow up and become corrupt. Her friend Evelyn, waving her hand, decided not to bother her anymore. Evelyn said goodbye sweetly, but Iris didn't even react, lost in her thoughts. Iris reassured herself that everything had a root cause, even the bad. He was probably teased for his appearance, and it crippled his soul. Confident that she was right, she decided to give him a chance to heal. She was determined to influence him and heal his dark soul. She walked down the corridor, yawning from fatigue in the long search. And then an idea flashed through her head. A brilliant one, as it seemed to her. Iris approached the gloomy abandoned house, her heart pounding. Inside, Theo was sitting on the dusty floor, clearly thinking about something. She ran in, joyfully shouting her name. "Iris!" The boy looked at him angrily and told him to get out before he killed him. Her attempt failed miserably. The reaction was unexpected. The plan clearly required some revision. The idea turned out to be raw. She rushed out of the house like a bullet, fear gripping her from within. The plan clearly needed to be revised. To avoid looking stupid, she kicked the ball as hard as she could into the house, and she decided to try again to get closer. The ball flew straight to Theo's feet, just as she had intended. Iris pretended that their re-encounter was a coincidence, and again she tried to introduce herself, giggling artificially. She held out the ball, suggesting they play together, but Theo simply pierced him, destroying his hopes. Every attempt she made failed. He was clearly irritated by her curiosity and persistence. The threats became more brutal since she didn't understand. Iris froze in place, her teeth chattering with fear. Theo was surprised to hear the barbs about the little devil. A crowd of guys burst into the house, obviously intending to humiliate him. Too confident, they did not expect resistance. One of them flew into a rage. Iris, hiding behind the door, watched. They laughed that he was lonely and no one needed him. Iris cringed in resentment for him because he didn't touch them. They had no right to insult him just like that. Iris realized that she had behaved no better than these guys. Theo's threats were not empty words. They had a reason, just a protective wall from their constant attacks. She decided that she had to change first and foremost. The heroine gathered her will into a fist to act here and now. She came out of hiding and boldly addressed the leader of the gang, William. Her gaze was blazing with unwavering determination and courage. The boys involuntarily retreated, shocked that she stood up for an outcast. Iris scolded everyone harshly for their vile behavior towards Theo. William was outraged that she, knowing what he was like, still defended him. Iris grabbed his finger that had just been poking her. She lied for the sake of the world by declaring Theo to be her closest friend. They did not believe how such an angel could be friends with the devil, but she sternly retorted that angels are friendly to everyone. Iris vowed not to remain silent any longer, and then they responded with pathetic threats. Now she also seemed strange to them, completely different, not the same as she had been before. They left with threats, promising that she would regret choosing the wrong side. Pleased with herself, she stood next to Theo. protecting both him and her dignity. She felt ashamed of the delay and immediately apologized to him. And she also directly offered friendship, which was her cherished desire. Theo just looked at the outstretched hand, not moving, and the room became tense. He remembered her words about fear next to him, so he rudely ordered her to leave. Iris froze in complete confusion as to where she had gone wrong and failed again. The moment seemed perfect for a friendship to begin, but she seemed to push Theo away. He simply headed towards the exit, without looking back, and completely ignoring the nonsense she was spouting. Knowing her stubbornness, Iris didn't even think about giving up, because her main goal was to become friends with Theo. She enthusiastically held up the book, the standard of ideal friendship that was described in it. Theo continued to ignore the annoying girl. Every movement she made only irritated him even more. A brilliant idea struck her, and she took a delicious macaroon out of her pocket. And I desperately wanted to share with him, let's say, to strengthen the mythical friendship. Theo was even more angry than before. He didn't need the macaroon, he only wanted her to disappear. And this gesture was in vain. Iris headed straight for the exit, hoping in vain that he would change his mind and call her back. It was getting dark. Theo went out to get some air and look at the stars coming on. But then Iris suddenly jumped out, trying to grab him. Theo stepped back, and Iris landed in the sand, rolling across the ground. It was clear from his face that she would definitely not receive any help from him. He simply stepped over her and headed towards the house, and never even looked back. Our heroine noticed a small plus. This time, at least he didn't get rude to her, as he had the previous times she tried. Iris looked at his house, which stood far from hers. It resembled a dilapidated shelter in dire need of repair. A sudden noise made her jump. It was Theo. He urgently needed to hide. A shocked Iris stared at him, her blue eyes wide. Theo's face, as usual, was frozen with only irritation and discontent. This facial expression was constantly present on his face. Iris realized that she had to be quieter, or he would close himself off completely. Looking at him, she realized that she had messed everything up again. He was angry. Iris noticed his clenched fists, because he was infuriated by the need to explain obvious things. For Iris, his red eyes and black hair meant nothing. She mused out loud that standards are created by people, and appearance does not determine essence. Theo seemed to listen to her with such attention for the first time, although his face remained stony. Iris beamed as she enthusiastically described her thoughts to him, down to the smallest detail. In the land where Iris was born, the power of the high priest was equal to that of the emperor, and myths spoke of a goddess who saved the world and a devil. Everyone believed in their existence, and rumors about ways to recognize the devil spread everywhere. The main distinguishing features were black hair and scarlet eyes, which our hero Theo possessed, for which he was persecuted. Iris begged him not to listen to those who called him the devil. Theo chuckled, doubting that she believed her own words. He asked why she thought these standards were false, but their conversation was interrupted by a strange, ominous rumble outside. Those same boys returned to take revenge, and taking hammers, they destroyed Theo's dilapidated house. Iris rushed outside, because she immediately understood whose doing this was. She was serious. William had only one desire, to destroy Theo's devil's lair to the ground. Hearing a terrible screeching sound, Iris looked up, and huge pieces of destroyed debris flew straight at her. She was already mentally ready to say goodbye to her life. But at that very second, Theo flew out of the house shouting that it was dangerous. Reflexively, he rushed towards Iris, saving her from the crushing blow. Theo collapsed right on top of Iris, taking the full brunt of the impact, his body covered in cuts and bruises. He rose slowly, with difficulty, without saying a word, and Iris's heart sank with worry for him. The look on his face clearly showed the excruciating pain he was in. The wounds were everywhere. At that moment, Iris felt a sharp burden of her own guilt, because it was her decision to go outside to the boys that led to this situation. She reached out her hand to his face, and it seemed that right now, under the influence of this care, his usually stern face softened, becoming almost friendly. Suddenly, a piercing scream came from behind, causing Iris to turn around sharply. The director ran headlong, her face distorted with fear and rage. The only thing she really cared about was finding out what had happened. Iris couldn't help but cry, knowing all too well how ruthless the director could be. Theo, seeing her tears, instinctively reached out to her hand, wanting to comfort and support her. But he held back the impulse, afraid to show concern openly, because it was incredibly difficult for him, so he only quietly asked her not to cry. The angry director stood with her arms crossed over her chest, tensely awaiting an explanation of what had happened. She had already decided that all children deserved punishment, but Iris desperately defended herself and Theo, trying to convey the truth about what had happened. However, even here the director found a reason to find fault, because they violated the ban by entering this forbidden place. Iris's eyes burned brightly with a sense of profound injustice. She could not remain silent, considering this punishment low and absolutely unfair towards both of them. Theo looked at her with sadness, but somewhere deep inside, he felt warmed by the fact that Iris was trying to protect them. In order not to hear the director's furious accusations, he went deep into himself, into his thoughts. Iris was terribly worried about his feelings, knowing how often his life had confronted him with cruelty and injustice. The director began to give commands, her withering gaze sliding over everyone, but most often stopping at Iris. She leaned down, almost crouching, to look Iris straight in the eye, and it was clear without words that she wanted to tell her something. Yes. She leaned even lower and whispered in Iris's ear that her behavior had gotten worse since she had become interested in this boy. But Iris was always guided by her own sense of justice, and her actions were determined only by herself. The director was clearly unhappy with this answer, because Iris, this bright angel, had chosen, in her opinion, bad company for herself. At that moment, Iris gritted her teeth, realizing that Theo was standing next to her and hearing all the nasty words the director said about him. And she was right in her fears. He immediately rushed to the exit. Iris called out to him. He froze for a split second, but did not turn around, internally agreeing with the director that he was not worthy of being there. Our heroine rushed after him, but it was too late. The door slammed right in front of her nose. The director tried with all her might to break this connection. Her behavior now resembled those same bullies, which was completely out of character for her position. Iris immediately said it to her face, without thinking about the consequences, without choosing her words. And in this she was absolutely right. How can an adult so primitively divide people into good and bad? This whole gang of guys didn't even deserve the right to talk to Theo. Their behavior was disgusting and inhumane. Iris adhered to the principles of the adult world. She was not going to bend over for anyone, and firmly believed that no one had the right to hurt. The director was clearly surprised by such courage, by the fact that this young girl openly expressed her dissatisfaction and defended her point of view. As she left, Iris sarcastically reminded her that it was this boy who had saved her life today. The medical office was silent, and Professor Haley was busy with paperwork. The first thing Iris went there for was medicine and bandages to treat Theo's wounds. Haley wasn't even surprised to see her favorite student rushing to help someone again. Iris immediately stated that the blood on the clothes was not hers, trying to avoid unnecessary questions. She quickly and purposefully collected everything necessary for treating wounds on the table. Haley carefully hinted at her help, having much more experience in such matters. Iris responded sharply that she couldn't help, then immediately apologized for her harshness. With her hands folded almost in supplication, she began to beg the teacher to lend her the medicine, explaining that she could not bring her friend here. Haley sighed heavily, but her face already showed that she wouldn't refuse. Since Iris didn't go into detail, Haley asked her to provide first aid to her friend, and then be sure to bring the victim to her. Iris's happiness at receiving the first aid kit was immeasurable, but then despair washed over her. She realized that she didn't know where to look for Theo. His house was destroyed. He had nowhere to go, which meant he could be anywhere. Trying to hide her panic, Iris asked Haley where she would hide if she wanted to be alone. After listening to the possible options, Iris quickly analyzed where she should head first. Having thanked the teacher, she flew out of the office and rushed off to search. Fear gripped her heart. She couldn't imagine the physical and mental pain Theo was going through. He not only saved her, taking the blows and receiving terrible bruises, he was also morally humiliated. It seemed as if people were just waiting for the moment to hurt him again. Iris stopped abruptly, carefully examining the area, and immediately she noticed barely discernible but obvious traces of blood leading towards the dark cave. Without a second thought, she boldly stepped inside. Yes, she found him, but the sight was heartbreaking. Theo sat with his knees pulled up to his chest, his gaze staring into space, looking completely lost. At Iris's call, he only turned his head slightly, casting a cursory glance at her. When he turned more closely, Iris saw his eyes filled with tears, his whole face breathing deep sadness. This boy was always alone. He had no one to cry to, no friends, no one who could protect and support him. Sitting down next to him, Iris reminded him of the conversation they had about standards before this whole situation. But most importantly, she told him that she believed in him more than anyone else. Theo looked at her with genuine surprise, but did not resist when she began to treat the wounds. He had truly never met a person who believed in him so much. This girl became a real ray of light for him, the kindest and most sincere creature. It was as if warmth emanated from her, warming his wounded soul. And such moments, such simple acts of kindness, gradually melted the ice in the boy's soul, causing something inside to thaw. Iris tried to calm him down, saying that devils only lie and never protect anyone. What worried Theo most was the thought that Iris might get hurt again if she continued to be around him. He even tried to scare her by talking about the curse that would befall her. It seemed that Theo himself actually considered himself the devil, since he said such things. Then Iris decided to ask him directly if he was really the devil. The question angered Theo so much that he turned sharply to her and shouted a denial. Emotions overwhelmed him with such force that he burst into tears, tired of constant accusations from all sides. But most importantly, Iris believed him, and to calm him down, she carefully tried to hug him. After placing the last bandage on his cheek, she finished the job. It seemed that our heroine had coped with the task perfectly. He was bandaged so carefully that he looked a little funny, like a walking mummy. Iris remembered her mother kissing her wounds when she fell as a child. Without thinking, she reached out to Theo to do the same. He felt so awkward about this gesture that he jumped up and began to wipe the cheek where she had kissed him. But Iris didn't attach much importance to his reaction. Suddenly, Theo rose into the air, and the entire cave was illuminated by the light of myriads of fireflies circling around them. The wounds and abrasions on his body instantly disappeared, and not a single scratch remained on his body. Iris laughed, playfully calling it her method of blowing on the wound. Theo looked amazed, and for the first time a genuine, real smile appeared on his face. Iris stood up, demonstratively indicating that it was time to go back. She extended her hand to her new friend, but he turned away slightly. He seemed to doubt whether to accept her helping hand. Having collected his thoughts and weighed everything, he nevertheless decided to trust this persistent girl. He was also a little embarrassed by her intense but warm gaze. Iris couldn't help it. She really enjoyed taking care of him. She so wanted them to finally be able to call themselves true friends. But Theo still considered himself unworthy of friendship with a girl like our heroine. Iris began to shake him gently. She does so much for him, and he still refuses to be friends with her. She was determined not to leave until he told her how they could become friends. Theo just pushed her away, because he himself doesn't know the answer to this question. He tried to run away, but Iris stood her ground, remembering the promise she had made to Haley to bring him back after first aid. The boy's condition surprised the teacher. The deep wounds had almost disappeared, and there were almost no marks left on the body. Theo looked almost completely healthy. Haley reassured Iris and asked her not to worry about his condition. Iris understood that Theo didn't like to be in the public eye. She gently touched his shoulder to get his attention. Then, in a less than ideal manner, she demanded gratitude for healing his wounds. To Theo, her words sounded like complete nonsense. Iris was angry because he constantly ignored her, despite everything they had been through together. The boys were going to the dining room for breakfast, and various conversations could be heard around them, and new rumors were being born. A quiet guy who loved solitude, he felt out of place. The huge crowd of people oppressed him. Iris advised ignoring those they didn't like, asking Theo to follow her example. He just muttered something strange about her not staying there. Theo, like a capricious child, threw out a phrase that devalued all of Iris's efforts. He clearly felt that he was unworthy of being among his peers. The phrase "we are friends" has been heard in this story more than once and will be heard more than once. And his constant denial of this friendship will also be heard again and again. Someday they will really become friends, or even something more. But you will find out about this a little later. For Theo, this girl became more and more strange and mysterious. One might think that Theo himself had changed a little, and Iris has recently changed her social circle dramatically, choosing this one young man as her friend. Angrily, she grabbed a fork and shoved a sausage into his mouth, so as not to have to listen to his boring complaints about their friendship that had so far failed. After finishing breakfast, Iris headed towards the exit to clear away the trays. Before she had time to rejoice at the start of a good day, she heard loud shouts from outside. A group of boys were sorting things out, already clenching their fists for a fight. Among them was Theo. He was holding one by the jacket, raising his fist, threatening to kill, as if he was incorrigible. His scarlet, blood-colored eyes stared intently and cruelly at the frightened boy. Iris decided to check what was happening on the street and saw Theo there. She didn't want him to do bad things, so she tried to pull him away. The boy admitted that he had made a terrible mistake. Then our heroine grabbed Theo even tighter, so that he wouldn't do anything stupid. As Theo looked at Iris and listened to her beg him not to do it, he loosened his grip. The boy broke free and ran away as fast as he could. To prevent Theo from getting the idea of running after the boy, she took his hand, after which she suggested that our hero go for a walk. Theo simply followed Iris without asking any unnecessary questions, but she herself showed interest in finding out what really happened between them. As it turned out, our hero only wanted to stand up for Iris. He heard that guy saying nasty things about her. She was surprised, because she didn't expect him to stand up for her. This touched Iris's soul so much, because such actions mean that he cares about her. To thank him, she rushed to him with the most sincere embrace. Iris even called herself stupid, because he only wanted to protect her. But Theo has a hard time showing his feelings, so he pushed her away out of fear. It seems that she once again pushed him away with her obsession. He noticed that Iris felt awkward after such actions. She thanked him for his concern and asked him to reconsider his attitude in communicating with other people. She also began to make excuses, citing the fact that she does not consider him bad and that he does this for a reason. Iris is still on his side. She just wants to help him. Theo had the feeling that she was trying to change him, but she was doing it for the good. Iris only approaches this with concern because she is afraid that in the future there will be too many misunderstandings due to his communication with other people. Our heroine was absolutely delighted because our Theo decided to take such a positive step. He just smiled at her sincerely, but it seemed that there was something else hidden behind that smile. Iris couldn't believe her luck and just looked at him. She still couldn't believe that he agreed. Theo smiled as if he was ready to commit some kind of brutal murder. The boys gathered on the field to play ball. Theo's gaze left much to be desired, as if he were possessed. Every time Iris tried to change him, his gaze sometimes seemed too crazy. He laughed a little, but agreed with her. Theo decided to try again, but it was all to no avail, as if he wasn't trying to fix it and was doing everything out of spite. He seemed upset by Iris's reaction and felt intimidated. Our heroine took a closer look, and it seemed to her that if they fixed their hair, everything would go much better. Iris didn't stand on ceremony. She grabbed his hand and pulled him along with her. All she needed was that Theo trusted her. She sat him down and got to work, and Theo had no idea what was going on. Her look was somehow crazy, and with the scissors, it was even more so. Theo looked at her with some distrust. Suddenly, she had never cut anyone's hair. Our hero quickly jumped off the chair and started to run, but Iris quickly grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and stopped him. No, well, her look was really terrifying. It felt like she should be the killer, not Theo. Well, if you think about it, maybe she really is a good hairdresser. Although she didn't hide the fact that she could cut his hair crookedly, Iris believes that she certainly won't make things worse. Theo raised the white flag. He decided to go on this adventure after all. Iris was even slightly sweaty from running and working, but she finally finished the process. Indeed, Theo's face softened. He became sweet and completely stopped looking like a devil. It seems that our heroine has done something stupid, because this cute face will cause a lot of problems and break more than one heart. Since our hero had not yet looked in the mirror, the first assumption was that nothing good had come of it. Iris brought him a mirror, expecting that when he looked at it, a lot of praise would come her way. Yes, as you already understood, our heroine loves herself very much. Theo took a close look at his new face, but the only thing he noticed was that his eyes stood out even more. Every time it is sometimes difficult for her to look into them, and even if she praises him all the time, he still won't believe it. To prevent him from saying anything else uninteresting, she decided to take the mirror from him. Theo didn't understand her gesture, so he just looked, waiting. Iris decided to take a chance and gave him a couple of compliments about his hair and eyes. She was so emotional that she began to glow. Theo was surprised by such pressure from her, but to some extent, he was already used to it. She continued to look at him with the most sincere smile. And Theo answered her. For the first time, he smiled so kindly. Iris couldn't believe her eyes. Behind that eternally dissatisfied face, there was hidden, genuine sincerity. It seems the past has taken over, and Theo has realized that he has gone too far. Now that our hero has a new haircut and the most gorgeous smile, he needs to find friends. Iris was so proud that she was able to achieve such a result in just a few days. In fact, Theo flatly refused to make friends, because he simply didn't want to. Our heroine did not understand what she was doing wrong, because on the contrary, she thought that if she corrected these shortcomings, everything would change. But the thing was different. He needed only one friend, and that was our Iris. She is the only thing he needs. Iris immediately realized that he was playing with her and didn't believe a word of it. Then Theo explained everything. He liked the way she reacted to things like that, and he wasn't really joking. He really believes that he doesn't need anyone else but her. Theo even decided to give in and let her cut his hair, because that's what she wanted. After all, more than anything, he wants our heroine to be happy. Iris was surprised, because he had never communicated with her like that before. She even decided to remind him that he had previously considered himself a bad friend. Then she grabbed his hand to take him out for a walk. But our hero is no slouch. He demonstratively removed his hand, after which he headed towards the exit on his own. Apparently, he felt awkward after his own words. He clearly allowed himself to do something he had never done before. Iris was squatting and drawing something on the ground. She asked Theo never to talk about the murders again, because all people are different and can misunderstand it. After all, a person is always judged by his words, she added. Theo was confused then, because he didn't know what to say to people who were trying to bully him. Iris suggested that he use his power if someone tried to treat him badly. But in reality, there are many ways to resolve conflict without using violence, and Iris has never been in conflict, so she can't even give him an example. Theo began to tease her, because she clearly lacked knowledge in this area, after which she began to contradict herself, because earlier she had said to use force, and now she was asking not to do it. Theo initially wanted to correct her, but he didn't really want to get in her way, so he kept quiet. But this also made Iris angry. He continued to listen attentively to her instructions. Iris added that one should be kind to everyone. The day X has arrived. Our heroine has gathered all the guys in one place. Everyone looked at her with incomprehension, waiting for some kind of explanation. Iris cleared her throat and said she wanted to introduce them to someone. She told a little about Theo and his character. When the interrogations began about who this person was, she could not answer them. She also explained that her friend was going through a hard time because many people were spreading terrible rumors about him. But really, everyone really ignored Theo, even though he had done nothing wrong. Iris said the boy never had fun with his friends or had the opportunity to play ball. She also suggested that the guys become friends with him, and surprisingly, everyone agreed. As a token of gratitude, Iris decided to treat everyone to chocolate. All the children ate it with pleasure and thanked their friend. Once she had calmed things down, she decided to finally introduce Theo to the boys. Everyone turned and looked at him in horror. When they saw Theo standing near the tree, many of them were speechless. Our hero was about to run away, but decided to try to make friends so as not to let Iris down. So he smiled sweetly and greeted everyone. Everyone was surprised by this gesture, because they remember a completely different Theo. Iris decided to defuse the situation and said that all people can change with great desire. Then one of the guys pointed his finger at him, and then reminded everyone that he had red eyes and black hair. Iris decided to give them an example that despite this, he does not behave like the devil at all. One of the guys had doubts about this and froze in his tracks. Then the girl said that there was no proof that he was not the devil. Iris was annoyed that everyone had such strange ideas about good people, and she decided to show them. She looked at Theo with a serious face. He immediately understood what needed to be done. Iris asked for her hand, which seemed rather strange. But what was even stranger was that she alternated his hands. She seemed to compare him to a dog who can give a paw and knows commands. But the guys continued to react violently to communication with this young man. One boy even shouted that she had tamed the devil. Everyone seemed to go crazy and ran to her, asking how she managed to do it. But Theo ruined this moment of glory by teasing her that it didn't work. Rumors spread throughout the school when Iris showed everyone her talent. Everyone started approaching her with questions, but our heroine didn't lose her composure. The kids thought Iris was incredible, but most of them didn't even listen to what she said. Evelyn seemed to be the only one who understood her, because she remembered how Iris studied the book every day. But she still decided to ask Iris how she managed to do it. After Evelyn, rumors continued to spread, but she didn't want that. Theo just reassured her and said that everything was fine. When Theo was silent, it scared our heroine even more, because he had the right to be angry with her for this. But he didn't understand at all how he could be angry with her. He even laughed, because he knew from the start that their plan would fail. But for him it was a trifle. Theo knows that Iris still won't believe what he says. He has already said that it is enough for him to have one friend in his circle. His words touched our heroine's heart to the depths of her soul. But in fact, their plan even partially worked. After all, almost no one laughs at Theo or makes fun of him anymore. When Theo decided to talk about taming the devil, and that he was supposedly a pet, Iris called him an idiot. In fact, she herself is irritated that they do not see the real him. Theo is satisfied with the fact that she is the one who no longer hates him. So he smiled sincerely and asked her not to be sad about it anymore. Iris breathed a sigh of relief and agreed with him. The new year had arrived, and for their empire, it was the most important holiday. The world that was once filled with devils was saved by the goddess, and on this day, they thanked their savior. And most importantly, on this day, you could make your most cherished wish, which she would fulfill. And every year, people make a wish for what they want most. Iris already knew what she wanted, so she asked Theo about his wish. She worries that he has no desire, but promises that she will fulfill one of them. But he changed the subject, because Iris had once said that she didn't believe in devils, and he was interested in what she thought about the goddess. Iris doesn't specifically consider Theo to be the devil, but she doesn't deny their existence. For some reason, she thought that he himself understood this. Theo decided not to respond to her words on this matter. Iris decided not to waste time and make her most cherished wish in advance. Our heroine adored this day. She looked forward to it more than her birthday. And when she grows up, she wants to take care of children who are in the same situation as they are. Theo really liked her ambition and her eternal desire to help someone. Iris also understands that she needs to work hard to achieve everything she wants. The boys are almost old enough to leave the shelter they live in. Iris was a good reader and writer and was physically fit, so finding a job would not be difficult for her. She became curious about what Theo wanted to do in the future, because he doesn't really know yet what he's really good at. But he didn't really like these questions. Iris decided to calm him down, because they were just talking about the future. But she also understood that they still had 2 whole years to figure out how they would make money. They shouldn't allow themselves to beg on the streets for the rest of their lives. Iris doesn't want to sit in one place for the rest of her life and not see the world. She is afraid that she will remain in one place for the rest of her life. Iris suddenly started to get emotional, which even scared Theo. She offered him the most risky idea, to escape from the shelter right now. And they will do it in secret from everyone. Our heroine was determined. At some point, Theo began to panic, because he doubted that they would succeed. Iris noticed this and decided to extend her hand to him to show the seriousness of her intentions. Theo thought about it, because he had never been far from home before, but he trusted her, so he grabbed her outstretched hand tightly. The intense proximity was putting pressure on Theo. He didn't understand why they were holding hands. The moon was shining brightly enough that night, so there was little chance of getting lost. Iris noticed the cave Theo was hiding in and decided to suggest taking a break and studying the map. Without getting to know his new friend well enough, our hero decided to ask why she wanted to leave. After all, he was not at all embarrassed by the fact that they lived in a temple, which was actually a fairly safe place. Iris felt like he was very nervous and not ready to leave the house yet. Then she gave him a couple of arguments, which Theo agreed with. Step by step, they approached the end of the road. Iris seemed to glow with happiness, because now she would be able to travel the world, as she wanted. Not noticing the stone, Iris tripped and fell into the snow. A frightened Theo immediately ran up to her. He felt guilty because he didn't hold her hand tightly, and that's why she fell. Iris burst into tears, because she really wanted to show him a beautiful view, and Theo was sincerely sorry that everything turned out this way. Then he stood up silently and turned his back to her. Iris immediately realized that Theo wanted to put her on his back to carry her, but she was worried that he was too small. She looked at him and through her tears saw the real seriousness on his face. It turned out that Theo was much stronger than she thought, because he had no trouble lifting her. Iris told them which direction they needed to go to get to the place she was talking about. While they were walking, our heroine had a question. She was wondering whether he wanted to go back or not. But before he could answer, they had reached the city, which looked like a toy from such a height. Iris asked Theo to come closer to get a good look at him. But as it turned out, our hero did not want to leave her at all. Theo thought, because if they leave the shelter, they will live separately and do their own thing. It seems like Theo doesn't want to move away from Iris, which is sad, but that's life. It will be difficult for them to spend all the time together every day if they are not a family. Iris suggested a lot of options, like seeing each other every day or sending each other letters. When the boys had had their fill of the view, they decided to continue their journey. It seems that our hero was shocked that their paths would soon diverge. And as sad as it was, Theo decided it was better to avoid his new girlfriend. Iris felt guilty because it seemed like she had hurt him badly. She went around to all her acquaintances and friends to find him, and it was as if she began to go crazy because it seemed that he had disappeared forever. Keeping her health in mind, Iris went to see Haley to have her leg examined, and the teacher immediately noticed that something was wrong with her. Iris's ankle looked healthy, and it's strange that she still comes in for checkups. Haley asked where she lost her friend, but our heroine remained silent. She didn't know what to answer, because she herself didn't understand what was going on in Theo's head and why he had disappeared so suddenly. Iris had a hard time telling or sharing anything. Haley waited for a moment for an answer, but realized there was no point in pressing her. Iris couldn't resist and decided to find out if the teacher had any friends. But then I realized that I asked the question incorrectly. Then Haley remained silent, because she didn't know what the question was about. She clearly noticed that our heroine had been saying a lot of strange things lately. It seemed that Iris was no longer the girl she once knew. There was a tension in the room. It seemed like Haley no longer saw Iris as the little girl. Then our heroine smiled sweetly to lighten the mood, and then she offered them a cup of tea. Haley accepted her offer and asked her to wait while she made tea. When she finished cooking, she began to listen attentively. It turns out that Iris is upset by the fact that her new friend is ignoring her. Teacher Haley is glad there is no global cause for concern. Iris immediately began to look for reasons in herself, because at her age she thinks completely like an adult. Haley continued to listen to her, sipping her tea. She immediately understood who she was talking about. She suggested that Iris think about their previous conversation, because perhaps she said something to him that could have offended him. Our heroine was surprised, and then decided to share with the teacher and told her everything. Then Haley laughed, because this was the reason why her friend was avoiding her. It seems that our heroine has lit a flame in the heart of a young boy. The teacher pointed to the side, because she seemed to see a boy with black hair. Iris immediately went out into the corridor and rushed to catch up with him. She shouted and asked him to stop so they could talk calmly. Theo said he didn't want to part with her, no matter what happened. Then Iris took his hand, because she wanted to see his face and not talk to his back. Theo looked at her carefully. At that moment, her cheeks even burned with excitement. Iris tried to reassure him that even if they had to part someday, they would be able to see each other again. But our hero stood firm, because if they stayed together, they wouldn't have to suffer. He also explained his ignoring. He was wondering what Iris would be like without him. Our heroine exhaled, because now she knew the reason for his behavior. Iris seemed not to want to hear him and stood her ground, not letting him say a word. Then he interrupted her, because he wanted to share what worried him most. Theo doesn't want to live a second without her, so he wants her to become his wife. After all, if this happens, they will stay together forever and create a family. But for Iris, love and feelings were important, so that the marriage would be real and not fake. Then Theo, without thinking for a second, confessed her feelings to our heroine. But when I saw the reaction to his words, I thought that she rejected him. But it was not so. Theo was determined. He knew what he was getting into, so he suggested dating and then getting married when they grew up. Iris was touched by his words, but it seemed like Theo was rushing things too much. He said the phrase, "You lifted me from the ground," and our heroine immediately shuddered. She was the first one who started treating him like a normal person. Theo looked down, and tears welled up in his eyes. Iris promised that she would always be by his side and would not go anywhere. Theo also apologized for pretending not to know anything. Iris decided that she would relieve Theo of his worries in this way, so that his obsession would pass more quickly. Theo couldn't contain his feelings and rushed to hug Iris. Now our hero has found peace, because his friend will always be by his side. Iris was glad they solved the problem. She realized her mistake and decided not to raise such topics with Theo anymore. The principal gathered all the children in the temple to pray. Each person read a prayer to themselves and asked for something of their own. A whole year had passed since the beginning of their friendship. Theo had matured and began to look older than Iris. During the breaks, Iris periodically glanced in his direction. The director was telling something, and also introduced the priests who came to the orphanage to meet the students. Since they will be quite frequent guests, they all need to get to know each other. Iris had never heard of priests visiting before, so she looked at everyone in surprise. But her gaze especially lingered on the guy who stood opposite. Iris seemed to like him, because she couldn't take her eyes off him. Theo noticed this, so he decided to remind them of himself. But our heroine said that everything was fine, and he just continued to look at her. Feeling eyes on him, he turned around and saw one of the priests staring at him. Iris and the guy looked at each other. At some point, it seemed as if she was under his influence or hypnosis. Our heroine didn't move at all. She just stood there, as if she had grown into the floor, and stared fixedly at one point. This frozen state lasted so long that it began to seem like some kind of endless, viscous dream that was not going to end. Iris suddenly became very weak. Her head started spinning and her vision began to darken. She was clearly losing consciousness. Luckily, Theo was very close, so he reacted instantly and managed to catch her, preventing her from falling to the floor. Iris found herself in a completely unfamiliar place, as if she had been transported to another world. She raised her head and saw the girl standing in front of her. She instantly seemed like a real goddess to Iris. This shining girl, without saying a word, slowly extended her open palm to Iris, as if offering something important. But before Iris could understand or do anything, a blinding flash of light flashed right before her eyes. Iris woke up immediately. This dream was eerily strange, too vivid and real to be just a mind game. At that moment, Teacher Haley calmly entered the room, apparently to check how our heroine was feeling. Iris, still not having come to her senses, and not understanding at all what had happened. Haley, with her usual soft smile, explained that our heroine had suddenly lost consciousness right in the middle of the celebration in the main hall. Iris's gaze automatically slid to the side, and she was surprised to notice Theo sleeping, peacefully snoring next to her. Haley was saying something else, probably giving some explanation or advice, but Iris barely heard her words. She was too deep in her own thoughts. Iris sincerely thanked Haley for caring for her while she was unconscious. As she was leaving, the teacher asked me to tell her friend that she was okay now, hinting at Theo. Iris's thoughts returned again to the moment before she fainted. She clearly remembered the priest's intense gaze. Lightly stroking Theo's still sleeping hair, she once again sank into the memories of her incredibly strange dream. The unpleasant feeling that she had forgotten something vital did not leave her. Theo suddenly woke up and, without thinking, hugged Iris tightly. He was very worried about her, so he did not leave her bedside for a minute. Our heroine noticed that something was wrong with Theo. The huge dark circles under his eyes indicated a sleepless night, and perhaps tears. She was deeply touched by how much her friend cared about her. He, of course, began to deny everything, but it was immediately clear that he was lying. A worried Theo insisted that Iris go to the hospital and get checked out. Iris asked him not to worry because she was feeling well, and seeing that he was tired, she suggested sleeping together. Theo blushed at the suggestion, but Iris didn't see a problem with that. Then, Theo reminded her that they were not little children, but adults. Haley overheard this awkward conversation. She looked out from behind the door to ask them not to swear. Iris told him to sleep on a chair since he didn't like her suggestion. But Theo would rather sleep on a chair than in the same bed with her. Iris covered herself with the blanket, displeased and demonstrative, and pouted. And then she apologized for the disturbance and unnecessary trouble. Theo leaned over a little and, lightly stroking her head, suggested that she get some sleep. But Iris couldn't close her eyes. She felt like Theo had changed too much lately. Then he became curious to hear what she thought about him. Our heroine looked away and thought. The first thing that came to her mind was a sensitive wild cat. Theo was embarrassed that she spoke about him in such a way. Iris decided to apologize for comparing him to an animal. Theo seemed to be offended by this, so he quickly covered her with a blanket and went to bed. At this moment, Iris felt awkward. Teacher Haley checked Iris's well-being and cleared her to go. Grabbing Theo, she happily ran towards the exit. Our hero behaved very badly. He pulled his hand away and said that they would no longer be together. Iris tensed, because she had absolutely no idea what had come over him. It felt like Theo was rebelling and wanted attention. Iris immediately decided to ask why he was doing this and what her fault was. But Theo looked at her so arrogantly that she felt uneasy. And then he added a phrase that could break your heart. "You are not my family." Iris looked at him at that moment as if her world had collapsed. Theo turned away and started to walk away. He did not explain the reasons. Our heroine only watched him go. And after this conversation, Theo began to distance himself from her. Iris was sitting in the library, studying some book. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat down next to her with questions. After which, she told him how he had been sad and alone for several weeks. Iris started to defend him. She suddenly jumped up and began to make excuses. The class fell silent. She had attracted too much attention due to the noise she had made. She explained the real reason to her friend, hoping to get rid of unnecessary questions. The librarian asked her to leave if she continued to make noise. Then, our heroine demonstratively slammed the book shut and decided to leave. She decided to go out onto the porch to get some air and think about what had happened. Reception seems to go crazy because Theo's actions are incomprehensible to her. Her thoughts were interrupted by the question of what she was doing here and why she wasn't studying with everyone in the library. It was Theo, standing and looking at her, waiting for an answer. When he noticed that she was completely naked and it was cold outside, he took off his scarf without thinking. Theo placed it around Iris's neck with great care so that she wouldn't get sick. She looked at him angrily because he appeared and then moved away. Then their eyes met. Theo explained the reason why he gave her his scarf. Iris jumped up abruptly. She was irritated by our hero's behavior. And then, tears appeared on her face, and Theo looked at her in surprise. He tried to comfort her and touched her face to make her look at him. Iris pulled his hand away too abruptly, because how could he even touch her? They started arguing because she was crying for a reason. It was because I had been avoiding her for a long time. He decided to guess the reason why Iris was crying and why she threw his hand away. It was all because Theo had distanced himself from her and left without even appearing in her sight. Iris was confused. Tired of the constant emotional swings, she got the impression that Theo was doing this on purpose. It was as if he had once again decided to check what our heroine would feel like if he left. But Theo tried to fix the situation. He carefully straightened her hair and added that he didn't want her to be sad. The thing was, he liked Iris very much. She didn't expect to hear such an answer at all. The reason was too simple. Iris always perceived him as a child, which was very repulsive. Tell took her carefully to a room with a fireplace so she could warm up, after which he pulled up a chair and sat down opposite her. He reminded her of an old conversation where he wanted to become one family with her. Theo doesn't call Horror some kind of brother or her pet. He wants Horror a partner. And he reminded her how she once called him a wild cat. At that moment, it immediately became clear to him that she did not perceive him as anything more. And he became worried, because he cannot force a person to perceive another as the one who may become a husband in the future. Iris tried to convey to him that it was too early for them to talk about this and that he was getting ahead of himself. But nevertheless, she didn't seem to take our hero seriously, and Theo just wants to be with her, even when they leave the shelter, and marriage is just one of the stages. Iris was shocked. She seemed to freeze in place. Then Theo tried to explain everything. He just wants her to be happy and not cry. And he didn't run away from her forever just because she cried. Iris started waving her hands, because everything was not as he said. She almost revealed Theo's plan, which consisted of slowly and imperceptibly winning her heart. The weather was fine, and Iris decided to go outside to tend to the flowers. Someone approached her, but not seeing their face, she assumed it was her friend. But since no one answered, she decided to turn around. It was the guy she had been looking at in the main hall at the party. He immediately realized that she was a kind person, because she took such good care of the garden. Our new hero's name is Frey, and he immediately introduced himself so as not to create an awkward situation. But it didn't work out well for him, because instead of a mutual greeting, Iris tensed up. In fact, this young man scared her, because she checked him just from one glance all day unconscious. She emotionally asked him what he needed and why he came to the garden. Frey just smiled, trying to show good intentions, but Iris became more and more angry because he did not answer her questions. Freya liked the fact that she was quite an intelligent girl, although this was to be expected. But he explained it by saying that he just wanted to get closer to her so that she could appreciate him at the end of the year. Their director will carefully ask about him. In general, this is an adult matter. Iris was indignant, but later replied that life is quite a complicated thing, after which Frey stroked her head, talking about future friendship. He said all this as if he had known her for a long time, which was even more frightening. Frey had once heard about Iris from the headmistress before she came to the orphanage, but he pretended that this falling situation was a pure accident. And he was not at all surprised that our heroine did not trust him. Iris noticed that he was looking at her strangely, so she decided that she would watch what he did. It's as if he's deliberately trying to appear to be a kind person. Iris took the watering can and decided to leave first, because the atmosphere and the feeling next to him repelled her. And when she left, she felt that he was hiding something. Iris ran into the room where Theo was supposed to be waiting for her. But our hero didn't answer her. He just looked at her with displeasure, because he actually saw how she communicated with that guy. Theo didn't want her to look, so he tried to push her away. But Iris still managed to get a peek. It turned out that the windows overlooked the flower field where Iris had just been. Our hero even tried to cover his face with his hair so that she wouldn't see all his discontent. Iris brought a textbook that they must read to complete the assignment. Theo just sighed heavily, because he knew how difficult a test they would have to go through. Iris knew that orphans were allowed to take the exam, and did so to ensure a good future for herself. And even if she doesn't succeed, she will still be in the black, because she will gain a lot of new knowledge. But then the question became pressing. What would happen to one of them if someone failed this test? Although Iris was irritated by such questions, Theo was only thinking ahead. Iris looked at him with all seriousness, so that he would start teaching. But Theo just kept asking questions about what would happen if that really happened. He assumed that Iris would most likely choose to separate for the sake of a great future. Their arguments could go on forever. This couple could be called fire and water. But Theo was confident that Iris would easily enter the academy. Our hero will be once for her, but also tried to predict his future. After all, if this happens, they will still have to separate. Under this, he asked her directly whether she would leave him if this really happened. It was as if everything was already written on Iris's face. Then, Theo decided to repeat his question again, expecting a clear answer. Then Iris jumped up, hit the table, and replied that she would not leave him. Irritated by the whole situation and conversation, she went to get a new book. And at that moment, Frey approached her with questions about the story. He always appeared too suddenly and quietly, but Iris decided to answer him gently that she was just preparing for the exam. Without wasting a moment, Frey decided to offer to help her improve her knowledge. He smiled sweetly and said that he had various knowledge. Iris seemed to have forgotten all her indignation and thoughts about whether this was a good person or not. Frey provided her with all the information and got the necessary books. But when I started telling her everything, the books weren't really useful. Thanks to his explanation, Iris received enough information. Frey even offered to tell something that not everyone knows, but promised that it would be interesting. He wants her to hear it from him. Iris was all attention. She sat waiting. Frey saw her interest, so he began his story about an unknown goddess who descended from the heavens to take care of people. She could remove evil and heal any wounds. Frey immediately noticed that Iris knew this story. The goddess descended from heaven to save humanity and began to take care of the human people, and also to save them from the hands of the devils who threatened them. That is why in their temple there is a man who lives under the name of the goddess. Iris had heard this story many times before, so it wasn't exactly exciting. But Frey didn't want Iris to leave, so he tried to lure her in with another story. He said that when the goddess was born, all the demons were born. This is why all devils and goddesses are so close. Iris immediately thought of Theo, because it seemed like he thought he was the devil. It seems that this really shocked our heroine. Returning back to Theo, Iris was lost in her thoughts. Frey and his words seemed to be stuck in her head. Theo noticed that something was wrong with his friend, so he asked if she was okay. He suggested that she take a little rest if she was not feeling well. Iris decided to share her strange dreams with Theo. She seems to hear voices from heaven saying strange things. Iris spoke of hers as if it were some kind of sacred memory. Theo started making fun of Iris, but later apologized for it. After all, he saw how it bothered his girlfriend. In the end, it was just a dream. Frey recommended one book to her. Even though he was an unpleasant person, he was a great teacher. Theo continued to delve into his studies, but Iris decided to distract him. She felt that they should hire a tutor to ensure they passed the exam. It seems he didn't like the idea at all. Theo doesn't like adults, and he wants to spend more time together, even if he has to study something that isn't particularly interesting. He wants to decide everything on his own, like adults do. Iris was angry. She just wanted to close her eyes and scream. Noticing her biting her lips, he seriously asked her to stop doing it. He understood that she was doing this because she was angry, and the best solution would be to just talk and not keep everything inside. And Iris decided to suggest asking knowledgeable people for advice. They just need to find the right person who can explain what they don't understand. After all, this is a great opportunity for them. Then they will definitely enter the academy. Iris decided to tell him about Frey, who recently helped her. Theo, when he heard this name, immediately broke the pen in half. He looked at her angrily and asked her to continue telling the story. But seeing the madness on his face, Iris first thought she needed to stop. But then she abruptly told about his help and that she had already asked Frey to become their teacher. Theo stood up from the table abruptly. It was as if he was ready to kill anyone who came close to her. But our hero pulled himself together and said nothing. In the most terrible mood, he headed for the exit. Iris immediately realized that it was Freya. She immediately began to catch up with him, but he did not stop. Iris decided to turn on all her charm, and Theo's face softened a little. She blinked her eyes and asked if he was angry with her or not anymore. But our hero turned away and said nothing. When she came to the dining room, Iris took some different delicacies and shared them with him. She gave him her favorite thing to smooth over the conflict. But nothing came of it. Theo continued to be angry with her. Iris went outside to check the condition of the garden. And when she saw Theo passing by, she picked a flower and handed it to him. But he just looked at him without reacting in any way. She decided to take a different route and asked her friend to help. She gave him a small gift and a note, and she expected to bring at least a small smile to his face. But Theo was much more offended, so he just went and crumpled her note. He was simply incorrigible. Morning came and Iris decided to try again. She waited until he passed by her room. Then she suddenly flew out and pressed him against the wall. Theo even felt a little awkward. Theo tensed. Iris was so close to him. When she tried to explain something to him, he just started shaking his head to the side. And then, hearing Iris's voice break, he looked at her. Our heroine asked him for forgiveness so emotionally that he felt uneasy. She didn't understand what she had done wrong, but it was important to her to maintain their friendly relationship. Our heroine was too sad that she was not studying and could not spend time with Theo. Theo just covered his eyes with his hand and remained silent, not reacting. Tears rolled down Iris's face. She thought he was being too emotional. They went into the study room to discuss everything. Theo seemed to be amused by the fact that Iris was running after him, and he apologized to her with a smile. But he does not deny that he was interested in watching her run after him, so he could not stop. Theo carefully took her hands and accepted the apology, but she really was sweet while she was running after him and trying. At first, these words only made her blush, but Iris warned Theo that if he continued like this, she would get angry. Theo also promised her not to do it again, and Iris decided that since he was offended by the presence of the account, she would go alone. And that's not even bad, because then she'll be able to teach Theo. The weather outside was beautiful. Iris walked along all inspired and humming a song. Suddenly, our heroine noticed Frey off to the side, who was catching the rays of the sun. And when she came up to him to say hello, he looked at her as if he had never seen anything better. Iris didn't just come up to him. She wanted to discuss their last conversation about studying. She would like to study 2 or 3 times a week, and Frey, in turn, suggested looking at the assignments that would be on the entrance exam. Iris thought it would be a good idea, noticing that he was obsessed with the goddess, and she will be very grateful to him for this help. But she continues to doubt whether she can trust him. Iris just smiled sweetly and said goodbye. A few days later, the first lesson with Frey came. Iris found many useful books. They decided to use the noisiest room for their lessons. Although with Theo, they always chose a quieter place. Since our heroine doesn't really trust Frey, she decides to avoid problems. When she entered the room, she was very scared. Theo and Frey stood in the middle of the room, looking at each other as if they were ready to kill each other. Iris felt uneasy because they were arguing. She entered the room, but no one noticed her, because there was a lot of tension. So she decided to clear her throat to get attention. Iris decided to remind Theo that the priest had agreed to be their teacher. She also introduced her friend Theo to Freya. The atmosphere continued to be tense, as if our hero was trying to incinerate him with his gaze. Since her friend decided not to study, she will go to classes alone. But Theo didn't remember saying anything like that. Out of jealousy that Iris would be studying with him, he suddenly decided that he needed it too. But she decided to remind him that he was against studying with a teacher. Then Iris asked Frey if they could study together, since he also had to take the entrance exam. Then he hesitated a little, saying that it would be a little problematic. Our heroine noticed that the priest was behaving too childishly. Although if you think about it, he was already 18 years old. Theo didn't understand why she wanted to study with such a person. Then Iris tried to persuade Frey, promising that he would try to work hard. And when she asked for forgiveness for his behavior, he immediately agreed. Iris was genuinely glad that they would be able to study together. But Theo wouldn't want her to be alone with him. Priest Frey decided to suggest that they start their lesson as soon as possible. He began to repeat the material he had already told Iris. When he noticed that she had run out of ink, he offered to go into the room and get new ones. Then Theo grabbed her hand and offered to use it. But Iris was more comfortable using her own, so she offers to talk to Frey while she is gone. Hoping that if they talked they would become friends, Iris went to get some ink. But she was absolutely wrong, because after she left the situation only got worse. The guy who kept smiling at RP sat right in front of Theo. The two of them were too odd a couple, it seemed to him. Even though he was a priest, it doesn't change the matter, because everything is too predictable. Frey almost agreed with him, but decided to make some adjustments. After all, he sees perfectly and clearly what is happening between him and Iris. She would have called him good no matter what he looked like, but she had to take the initiative to convince the other children. To save everyone else from a man like Theo. At that moment, our hero's eyes seemed to light up. He looked as if he was ready to do something bad. Theo used to think that all priests were wasting their time for a god who didn't exist. When Frey called him pathetic, Theo suddenly jumped up and slammed his fist on the table. He also continued to provoke him, talking about Iris. Entering the room, I noticed a global silence, which was quite strange. With her hands at her sides, she seemed to be trying to raise her two children. Then the priest replied that he and Theo had nothing at all to talk about, since they had no common topics. Our heroine noticed that the atmosphere became even more tense, although she wanted a different outcome. Several days have passed since the training. A new lesson has begun. After the first lesson with the priest, Theo did not even want to come for more. Anger was clearly visible on Iris's face, because he even insisted on these lessons. But despite this, Frey continued to spend his time on these activities. He immediately noticed that something was bothering her. Iris decided to show him her cards, because she is demanding of everything, so she doubted him for a long time when they first met, because he understands perfectly well that no one will help for no reason. But it seems that this time she was wrong, so she decided to apologize. The priest found this very funny, because Iris is kind to everyone. In reality, everything was much simpler. Frey just wanted him and Iris to become friends. They even look like brother and sister, because they have the same hair and eye color. Since Frey doesn't have any younger siblings, it's not hard for him to help. Then she happily offered to become his sister. But it seems that this proposal did not suit him very well. Many people said that our heroine looks like a goddess because of the similarity of her hair and eye color. The priest agreed with this, and then Iris wondered if he would like to have a sister like that. He thought for a bit and was embarrassed, answering positively, but there was one thing. At that moment, I pouted, because I didn't understand such a reaction. It seems that our priest had other intentions for our heroine. The next day, Iris carried the books to deliver them, after which she saw Theo ahead and ran after him. He looked rather gloomy. The only thing that worried him was whether demons really existed. Iris was surprised by this question, because she didn't understand why he was suddenly asking. But he only asked her to answer, because he doesn't understand whether the demon and goddess are nonsense or the truth. No one has seen them, so there is no evidence of their existence, she replied. But she didn't understand why he was so worried about the existence of a demon and a goddess. Iris immediately realized that it was Frey who had messed with his head and decided that she would deal with him. Then, Theo was offended that his girlfriend still thought he was a child. Trying to find out the real reason for his worries, Theo just turned away and left. Iris was left alone in the corridor, only watching him go. Entering the classroom, she reminded him that he would have to study for a long time. But he simply hated Frey and his activities with all his soul. Iris won't ask Theo to be friends with him if he doesn't want to, but she hopes that he won't hate him so much because he is her teacher. Also, hating someone is very difficult emotionally, especially the priest, Iris told him. She also understands that they won't be able to study together anytime soon. Evelyn sat in the classroom, looking at the sky with some interest. When she saw her friend Iris, she was very happy to see her. My friend didn't lose her composure and immediately started asking about her relationship with the priest. She described his appearance and was curious about what was going on between them. Iris began to avoid answering because she doesn't want to discuss such topics. Evelyn was hurt that they were friends, but she didn't share anything. At first, it even seemed to her that they really were brother and sister. She also noticed that he was standing outside and waiting for Iris. Evelyn said she would look after the garden herself, but he continued to go there every day. But our heroine denied everything, citing coincidence. But her friend had some guess. She feels like he came to find her because she is his younger sister who once went missing. After all, if this were not so, he would not be looking for her constantly. Although it would be worth thinking about, because he already said once that they have similar appearances. She immediately remembered how he started helping her with her studies. They have similar facial features, hair and eye color. At that moment, she seemed to start having hysterics. Evelyn even liked it a little, some intrigues and investigations. Because of the overly emotional conversation and noise, the librarian approached them and made a remark. Evelyn took Iris by the hand and dragged her towards him to find out everything. But it embarrassed her, because how could she just ask him like that? Hearing some noise behind him, the priest turned around. Evelyn didn't stand on ceremony. She immediately said that she wanted to ask him about something important. But the most important thing is that he is extremely honest with them. The girls seemed to surround him, and he had no choice but to respond. Evelyn asked about his coming to the shelter, because it seemed to her that he came to find someone. The priest was even a little confused by this question. Frey was even slightly taken aback by such a direct question. His eyes suddenly became large and round. It was at that moment that she realized that Evelyn had apparently been absolutely right in her guesses about him. Frey tried to quickly pull himself together and pretend that she was completely right. Evelyn began to jump for joy because she was right in her guess. Frey couldn't help but smile. Their search had turned out to be over such a trivial matter. Evelyn opened her mouth to add something, but Iris immediately stopped her. Iris's ringing laughter came in response, and she playfully covered her friend's mouth with her hand to keep her from saying anything unnecessary. Iris immediately, with warmth in her voice, thanked Frey for finding the time for them and answering their question. Evelyn almost jumped for joy because she was right, and they quickly hid around the corner of the house. Iris understood that there was no point in getting ahead of herself and winding herself up, because Frey had not given them any precise confirmation. For Evelyn, however, these hints were enough to make everything come together in a clear picture in her head, although she herself could not yet believe it. She was filled with pure joy for her friend, because Iris has a brother, which seems incredible. Iris looked at the shining Evelyn, and with horror, the realization came to her that now her enthusiastic friend definitely couldn't be stopped, and Theo would be furious. Now she needs to come up with something to somehow prevent this situation. She took her hand and asked her to keep everything a secret, so that only she, Iris, and the priest knew about it. She also asked again not to tell anyone, but Evelyn already wanted to tell Haley and Jess's teacher. But nevertheless, she agreed to keep it all a secret, because it was impossible for her and the priest to become a family. The next day, Iris and Theo went to class, where Priest Frey was waiting for them. Theo noticed that Iris was not herself, because she did not utter a word. Frey talked about important information that would be on the exam. Because Iris didn't react, Theo and Frey's gaze lingered on her. She immediately apologized, as she was just lost in thought. But Priest Frey looked at her and said that he understood everything. There were some strange but very warm feelings on his face. Theo immediately asked what his girlfriend was thinking about. He even put a glass of cold juice on her cheek to bring her to her senses. But our hero immediately noticed that she was lying to him. Iris immediately started to deny it, and Theo felt hurt that she didn't want to tell him. But she only understands that he will be upset to learn that Frey may be her brother. If this really happens, she will have to go with Frey, and Theo will be furious. Iris jumped up abruptly. She apologized and said that she urgently needed to leave. The priest didn't have time to answer before she had already run out of the classroom. As I walked down the corridor, I tried not to show that anything was wrong. Iris has quite a lot of friends, but she is not ready to share her experiences with all of them. The only person that came to mind was Teacher Haley. But when Iris entered the office, she saw Frey standing by the window. She didn't expect to see him here, and this surprise made her freeze for a moment. The thought flashed through his mind that he knew her whereabouts, but Frey just shrugged, calling their meeting. He also said that they drink tea together quite often, but Teacher Haley responded in a way he didn't expect. After all, everyone already knows that he sometimes follows Iris. Ellie didn't want to get involved in their interesting relationship, so she asked them to leave. She threw them out the door, and they both felt awkward about it. To ease the tension, Frey asked Iris for help. He needs to prepare a gift, but he has absolutely no idea what children like. She was surprised that he was asking her in particular, but the answer was obvious. She was the only one in this place who was closest to him. Iris sat in the carriage and looked out the window, observing the beautiful scenery. Opposite our heroine sat Priest Frey. He did not take his eyes off her at all. He just smiled sweetly, because he was glad for her help. A few days ago, they came to the director to ask permission to leave the shelter. And what a surprise it was when she allowed it, because usually she doesn't like it when students walk outside the orphanage. And no one knew that everything would turn out like this. He decided to suddenly prepare gifts, because he could do nothing else. But Iris had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. Suddenly, through the window, she saw the city center, which she had only heard about, and it turned out to be better than she thought. Frey came down and offered his hand to help our heroine. He also added that it would be a problem if they got lost in the city. But he knows that Iris is not little, so he is sure that everything will be fine. For a second, she even wondered if he knew about her reincarnation. The priest walked as if looking for something specific, shaking his head from side to side. Frey saw a store and suggested going there to look at something. And then he looked at her with a gloomy, very frightening look. Our heroine even felt uncomfortable. It turns out that there is a problem. He is worried that they might not like the toys, and they will simply eat the food. As Iris wandered through the market, she admired the huge variety of food and souvenirs. The priest became interested in what kind of gift she would like to receive. Everything turned out to be much simpler, if not a toy. Then clothes would have been a good option. But our heroine came up with another option, a diary. After all, he thinks it's cool to use it to write down his secrets. But she also understands that not everyone can write, so she's not sure it's right for everyone. Suddenly, her gaze fell sharply to the side. One thing still caught her eye. These were gloves and a hat. Because winter is coming soon, and perhaps not everyone has suitable clothes, Frey suggested that she model to see what it would look like. The white hat suited her very well and made her look fresh. But before she could turn around, Frey brought her another pile of clothes that she had to try on. A couple of hours had already passed, and he was still wearing some kind of hats and dresses. Iris began to beg him to finish, because she was very tired. Then the priest asked her to try on the last hat. There were more and more people at the market. It was even easy to get lost. While she was looking at the souvenirs, Frey approached her. He showed her a beautiful, bright yellow dress. It turned out that he bought it for her, so he could wear it next time if she agreed to go out with him like that sometimes. This idea seemed a little dubious after so many hours of trying it on. She also noticed that he treated her like a little child. In this image, our heroine looked gorgeous, and today she will do everything he wants. Frey even suggested buying her a toy rabbit, as it would perfectly suit her image. After visiting many stores, he still made a choice in favor of books, hoping that with their help, he would teach children to read. And there really are no children's books in the shelter. They are too uninteresting, and many do not want to read them. These fairy tales will be a great gift for students. As they went on about their business, Frey bought her a lollipop. And in fact, he doesn't think it's small. He just decided to make it nice, so he bought it. Before she could answer, a passing man pushed her, after which the lollipop fell to the floor and shattered into pieces. Iris felt hurt by what happened. The priest really wanted to restrain himself. His gaze changed. Iris held his hand and suggested that they just go back. Then he decided that things wouldn't go that way. So he went back to the shop and bought her a new lollipop, after which he picked her up in his arms and carried her away to prevent another such situation from happening to passers-by. Frey also noted that Iris is very light, but she immediately blurted out a question that he had already answered for her and Evelyn. The priest was a little embarrassed and simply nodded his head. And then he replied that he wanted to become one family in the future. Iris didn't know how best to respond, so she just kept quiet. It seems that Frey's words were indeed true, but the thought that he might have lied didn't leave Iris. It may be that his motive was to hide something. As she walked down the corridor, she saw Theo in the distance, walking quickly towards her. He, without asking anything, simply ran up and hugged her. He became afraid that Iris might leave. He began to beg her to stay in the shelter, but Iris pushed him away and asked him to calm down. She touched his cheek and then asked him why he had such thoughts. Theo saw how they were hurrying, and it seemed to him that they were leaving for good. So he thought that she didn't want to say goodbye to him, or talk to him at all. But our heroine reminded him that she couldn't live without him, after which she asked not to worry, because she was not going anywhere. As they sat in class, Iris grabbed the book and said she would be back soon. He saw how the priest would go to any lie to take Iris to the temple, and he is determined to fight to the end, because he is the one who should become her family, and for everything to work out, he needs to seem weak, then she will never leave him. Iris was worried that she had lost his book, but he didn't react to it in any way. He just smiled. He was getting better every day. She thought that everything would return to normal, but this had been going on for several weeks. But what was even more surprising was the way he communicated with Priest Frey. Frey also noticed that Theo had changed and was acting very nice. It may seem that he doesn't like the changed Theo, and perhaps it even irritates him. Frey considers her his little sister, and Theo acts like a different person. She doesn't understand what's going on with either of them. Iris buried her face in her book to avoid paying too much attention. Theo saw that Iris was tired and suggested that they rest a little. The atmosphere in the room was too strange. Frey happily agreed to a short break. Since all this scared her, she decided to ask Theo directly, "Why is he behaving like this lately?" The only thing that worried him was whether Iris would stay with him. After the lesson was over, Theo stood up and thanked the priest, but Frey's gaze left much to be desired. He was truly irritated by our hero's behavior. The priest smiled at Iris and said goodbye, adding that they would meet at the next lesson. When Iris heard the chuckle, she realized that she had imagined Theo's good attitude towards Frey. He wondered if she would continue to study at this place. When I heard a positive answer, I decided that I would do the same. Iris asked him not to worry so much. She also apologized for making him think she could leave him and didn't know it could hurt so much. And she will be glad to tell him everything that happened to her when he is ready. And now she is ready to confidently and firmly say that she will never leave him. And also in any situation, he will definitely protect and guard. She plans to always be by his side. Haley seemed to sense that Iris would come to her. She even feels like her medical office has turned into a consultation room. She blamed it all on the fact that the teacher was too good at solving personal problems. However, Haley was already expecting a gripping story. Then she told everything as it was, that the priest Frey became her family, but she explained that he said so at their last meeting, or, more precisely, that he came to the shelter to find her. Then, Haley assumed that he was her brother, and that they had indeed been separated as children. Iris's face showed that this bothered her, but Haley didn't see anything wrong with that, because having a family was good anyway. Iris was scared by the fact that it didn't initially seem like he was looking for his little sister. It turns out that Iris came to Haley to explain his behavior and help her understand his intentions. And she can't accept him as family if she doesn't know why he needs a sister. To Haley, Priest Frey seems like a bad man. He periodically came to her and told her how sweet and smart our heroine was, so he understood her concerns. She needs to get an answer to the question in order to understand what Frey really is. And then we'll see, depending on the situation, whether she wants to accept him as family. There is a possibility that she is clinging to this goal because she genuinely wants to become his family. Entering the room, Iris saw a secret gift from Frey, and she had never seen this feather before. And what she was most worried about was that she was being lied to. The night was not the best. Our heroine had a dream about Frey tormenting her. When Iris decided to go out into the hallway, all her friends noticed that something was wrong with her. She explained it all by saying that she simply didn't get enough sleep. And then a perfect thought, in her opinion, appeared in her head. She decided to ask the kids how they would feel if a stranger suddenly appeared and tried to make friends. A friend said that they shouldn't communicate or go anywhere with strangers. And also, if he suggests something, you need to immediately run away from him. But everything was much more complicated, because the stranger wanted to make friends. The friend had no other thoughts than to call the guards. Everyone really wanted to be taken from the shelter, but she tried to console them by saying that they were all one big family. and no other person has such a huge family. The boys hugged each other with the warmest feelings, speaking about their love for each other. Today was a wonderful day. The food in the canteen was unusual and very tasty. The girls were sitting and chatting, and Theo stopped to get Iris's attention. She immediately invited him to join them. Iris was so caring that she offered Theo to try absolutely everything. A friend asked if she could share her piece with Theo. She asked, as if she was asking permission to give the dog a treat. Theo was also not averse to trying something new. His friend was glad he tried it. Then Iris stroked his head, telling him that he was a good boy. After this, everyone at the table decided to share their food with him. Iris knows she's treating Theo like a pet, but she's pleased to see the boys getting along with him, and it seems to her that there is no need to interfere, just as Theo is not against it. A few days later, the kids in the cafeteria began to mock Theo. William still considered our hero a demon and laughed that he was trying to imitate people. He even became curious as to why the angel Iris was still covering for him. Then her side started calling him names, because he was not behaving like a human being, but like a gorilla. William felt uncomfortable why everyone was smiling, because the man standing next to him was the devil. There was tension between Iris and William, and the whole situation made everyone angry. Our heroine even clenched her fist to simply hit him, but Theo stopped her. William, seeing this, pulled another of his stupid jokes, but Theo ignored it completely. He just stood in front of him and smiled. He even kindly asked him not to bother Iris anymore. William was frightened by this smile. He was even confused and did not know how to react. Iris was overjoyed because her friend had become a good person. Since William didn't like his overly kind behavior, he made a decision. At that very second, he jumped up and swung his fist at him. All the girls gasped in shock, waiting to see what would happen next. Our heroine was already ready to give him a good whack and help her friend. But before she could do anything, Theo easily stopped William. And he also easily saw through him. Theo, with his calm behavior, only makes him a laughingstock. Everyone started to pull William away, saying that everyone in the shelter is family. The boy even started crying, thereby trying to portray himself as a victim. He was offended that they perceived Theo as an ordinary person. Iris was happy with this outcome. She just smiled and waved goodbye to him. And her friend also didn't think that Theo could be a demon. William was beside himself. He couldn't believe that everyone had turned away from him so easily. Iris thanked everyone who stood by Theo's side. Then William started screaming and lying that he felt some strange power inside him. It was like something demonic, but the guys just looked at him with some kind of condemnation. Iris told the boys that she would come in a little while. She came close to William to protect her friend, but he was only trying to explain that he saw with his own eyes how he used some strange power. Then Iris's face darkened, and she asked him to explain clearly what he called a strange power. Evelyn decided to intervene to prevent their conversation from escalating into a fight. But no one answered, so she just asked what they were doing. But Iris explained that they were looking for a way to protect themselves from demonic forces. Evelyn had no idea that she and William were so close, but knowing his friend and the fact that she won't fall for such an obvious lie, he decides to come up with something more convincing. And she added that Evelina is the only one who knows about this, and she is the first person with whom Iris decided to share, because she considers her her best friend. Having heard the answer, Evelina immediately decided to leave them and said goodbye. Our heroine knew that she had all the gossip written down in her notebook. William was worried about what Iris thought of him. He was even a little embarrassed, because all this time he hadn't even suspected it. Iris was tired, even though it was still morning. All this showdown took too much energy. When she went outside, she saw Theo sitting on a bench, surrounded by many guys. Everyone praised him for this behavior, warning that it was best to try to avoid people like William. It took Iris a long time to help Theo become so happy, but now she had other worries. William's words about the strange power did not leave her head. She even shuddered for a moment, and Theo noticed it. He greeted her with a smile, and Iris decided to think about it later. He immediately asked why she was talking to William alone, but she was just curious to see what kind of crap he would come up with this time. But she didn't have time to find out anything, because her friend suddenly appeared. She's so glad that all the kids don't think he's a demon anymore. Theo believes that it's all thanks to his girlfriend, but she thought differently, because he himself changed their opinion of himself. He jerked sharply, because he thought it was all Iris. She is the reason why he tries to control his emotions and be alone with other children. After all, He wants to be like her and stay with her forever. The fact that Theo changes for Iris brings her pleasure, and she also wants to stay with him forever. The morning conversation significantly raised our hero's mood. He even greeted the priest with a smile, which Frey did not like very much. Theo inquired about the reliability of these sources, because the exam at the academy is very important for them. But Frey replied that if he was worried, he could stop training. He also added that he decided to train Iris because he has a special connection with her. But Theo doesn't think that this connection is more important than the one between him and her. After this, both Priest Frey and Theo looked at her expectantly. But I wouldn't want to be dragged into this again. Iris sat nervously, not making a sound, completely unwilling to answer. At some point they calmed down and stopped fighting with each other. She is, of course, interested in why they started arguing, but she doesn't plan to ask. I asked Theo what was going on in class today. She took him by the cheek and asked him to answer honestly, because she knew that he understood what she was talking about. Theo looked at her resentfully, not knowing whether to answer. Then Iris offered him some candy to ease the situation, but she hoped in vain that the candy would help get him to talk. And yet she shoved it into his mouth like a little child, watching him experience it with pleasure. While Theo was chewing the candy, he even managed to sigh with displeasure. Then Iris asked him what his favorite food was, and he replied, sausages, croissants, and strawberry jam. She was surprised, because everything listed was her favorite, although it might be because Iris was the one who always treated him to it. Our heroine did everything for Theo, but he understands that he cannot give her much in return. But one thing may be that they are her favorite snacks, which is why he loves them. This touched Iris deeply, but she also felt that she hadn't done much for him and wasn't asking for anything in return yet. Even when Iris takes his hand, it means a lot to Theo. And then, right after these words, he suddenly hugged her. It was a simple gesture, but it filled Theo with a deep sense of security. In that embrace, there was a quiet plea to never leave him. Iris froze in his arms, as if frozen. Her body tensed, and her breathing stopped for a moment. Creating distance, she looked at him silently, still trying to comprehend what had happened. Iris has absolutely no idea which Theo is real. Sometimes he smiles innocently. Sometimes he screams in a terrifying voice right in her ear. Theo noticed that Iris was lost in her thoughts and cupped her cheek. Iris was indignant, and then asked him directly why he was arguing with the priest. Suddenly, a girl approached them and noticed that Theo was using her own methods. Iris noticed her. She didn't even know that there was such a beautiful girl in their shelter and had never seen her before. It even seemed to her that she wanted to tell them something. The girl's name was Grace. She came a little closer and greeted everyone. Iris also took the initiative and introduced her friend Theo to her. But Theo just didn't say a word to her. Our heroine became curious if she knew about the rumors that Theo was a demon, although maybe she is simply unbiased. But in any case, it's good for Theo to have a friend who is kind. She wanted to say something to Theo, so she asked to be left with him for a minute. Iris understood this approach on her part. She waved her hand and said that she would wait for him on the bench. Our heroine felt something was wrong. She can't explain her feelings, but it seems to her that something is wrong with this girl. Either she's just imagining things, or she's starting to get jealous. Or perhaps she even considers him her own, which makes her feel like she's a terrible person. It seems that our heroine has fallen into some kind of internal conflict. While she was thinking, Evelyn, whom she had not even noticed at first, approached her. Well, the friend immediately saw the fear on Iris's face, and the reason was already clear to her. After all, she saw Theo with some girl on the side. Evelyn even started shaking Iris to get everything out of her. She believes that she and Theo are an official couple, and no girl can come between them. Iris's face darkened, as her friend's words surprised her too much. The rumor that she and Theo were an official couple didn't make her particularly happy. Evelyn was upset that she was wrong in her assumptions. She took out her notebook and asked to listen to her carefully. She had previously introduced Theo to the other children at the shelter, and they had been inseparable ever since. They walked together all the time, and she was the only one he smiled at and listened to. Evelyn even thought that either Iris really didn't know, or was just pretending. She even noted that our heroine doesn't just think of him as a simple friend. She feels like her friend treats him in some special way. She replied that Theo was just a sore thumb to her. This meant that she couldn't leave him alone, and felt like she had a responsibility to take care of him and protect him. But Evelyn thought it was love. After all, no matter what she calls him, It's clear that she has a soft spot for him. My feelings for him should never have been more than friendly sympathy. Iris only unconsciously denied everything Evelyn said. She shouldn't feel anything for him, because they are not just friends. They have always been and always will be. Deep down, our heroine knew that she was revealing her true feelings by denying them. Evelyn, who does not know that a strong denial usually means agreement, did not continue to torment her with questions. But despite everything, she believed that this was unacceptable. Evelyn took matters into her own hands, because she couldn't just stand there and watch as someone tried to take Theo away from her. She came closer and decided to say hello. Iris didn't like this idea. Grace looked at her with complete confusion about what this girl wanted. She then explained that she was Iris's best friend. The situation has become tense. Evelyn wants to convey only one simple thing to her. No matter how hard she tries to get closer to Theo, she will never outshine Iris. Our heroine felt disgusting at that moment. She noticed that her friend was writing something in her notebook again. Evelyn said what she wanted to say and decided it was time for her to leave. She just left her friend to clean up the mess she had made. She apologized and said that Evelyn apparently misunderstood everything. Grace looked at her with some disgust, and there was clearly displeasure on her face. Iris tried to soften the situation by saying that it was always good to have friends. Theo stood there silently at first, but then decided to support his friend, after which he abruptly told Grace that he didn't want to be her friend. She stood in a stupor, and Grace was surprised by this turn of events. Although he shouldn't have spoken like that, he was just being honest. Grace's tears returned. She felt hurt that he didn't want to be friends with her. She didn't know how to react. She managed to say something to him, and Theo grabbed her and took her away. Grace was simply furious. She just stood there and watched them leave. Then Iris pulled her hand away and stopped. She didn't like the way he talked to Grace because he hurt her feelings. Iris thought he had changed, but it looks like she was deeply mistaken. After all, even if he doesn't want to be friends with her, he shouldn't say such terrible things. He should have just stated the reason or said it in a less rude manner. But Theo even understood why he needed this if he only needed Iris, and he believes that even if he hurt her feelings, he shouldn't worry about it. He doesn't want to be friends with her, so he doesn't care how she feels. She felt that he was changing for the worse and considered herself to be to blame for this. Iris explained that the inability to sympathize with another person's feelings is a huge disadvantage. She asked him not to do it again and ran into his arms with tears in her eyes. Then, Theo promised that he would come to her and apologize and even become friends if that was what she wanted. Iris looked at him as if expecting a promise. Theo understood everything without further ado. He just looked at her and said, "I promise." After making his promise, Theo went to Grace to apologize for being rude. When he approached her, he extended his hand as a sign of reconciliation. Grace's face lit up as if she hadn't cried at all before. After that, they became very good friends. Iris and Theo were walking in the park, discussing various topics. Then Grace ran up and suggested that Theo go for a walk together. Iris just smiled and waved at him. This girl seemed to be stalking him every time. She even stood and waited for him near the dining room to have lunch with him. Even though Iris felt abandoned, she just had to accept it. It was as if this girl was deliberately trying to take Theo away from Iris. A few days later, the books they had chosen for the shelter together with Frey arrived. All the children were very happy. Some of the books they had never even seen. Iris was pleased that the priest had done such a good deed. Frey saw that the children had finished reading and went to put the books back. Iris walked up to him. He had seen her reading to the other children earlier. He did a lot for the children from the orphanage, for which she is very grateful to him. But in general, for him, it was just an excuse to take a walk with her again. I was a little surprised to hear such statements. Priest Frey suggested that she change her clothes and go for a walk. It seems like he really enjoys spending time with her. Apparently, he, like Iris, really wants a family. As they were leaving the office, they ran into Theo, who immediately asked her with displeasure where she was going. Then she answered directly that she was going for a walk with Priest Frey. Theo got angry and pushed Grace away. He was just furious. Then Iris explained to him that he wanted to treat her to thank her for helping him choose a gift. Grace added fuel to the fire by saying that the priest and Iris were very close. And Theo wants to go too, because he thinks that if he just wants to buy lunch, he won't mind a third person. He and Evelyn are simply obsessed with the idea of being best friends. Then I decided to just ask the priest Frey directly, since he would pay. But she had one condition. First of all, She had to make peace with him. Grace was very stressed by Theo and Iris's relationship. Our hero merely extended his hand and, with a not very pleasant face, offered reconciliation. Iris seemed to know it would happen, exactly as she had imagined. The Frey priest shook his hand, but it was clear that he was not very pleased. It all looked as if they were performing some kind of obligatory ritual. Iris doesn't know how to reconcile two people who see each other as enemies. Priest Frey decided to pay a compliment to Iris. Then, Grace tried to lighten the mood by saying that the weather was beautiful today. Everyone just said what they wanted to say, and it made our heroine nervous. Frey offered to bring Iris a blanket with concern, and Grace tried to get attention again. Iris decided to ask Grace how they spend their time together. But Theo interrupted her and asked why she was so interested in this. But Iris wants them to become good friends. Grace looked at her with displeasure, because she didn't believe a single word. For our heroine, the most important thing is that Theo has as many friends as possible. Priest Frey noted that she cared very much about her friend. And what worries him most is whether he will ever become such a good friend to her. But Theo answered for her that this would never happen. And he's not trying to start a fight, so she might not look at him like that. He is simply completely sure that the priest will never become a dear friend to her. Priest Frey was irritated by such confidence in his words. Theo smiled, because he should understand the answer to this question himself. The situation became tense. Frey and Theo kept an eye on each other. Iris was afraid that the priest knew why he and she couldn't be a family. After all the arguing, they fell into silence for a while. The waiter had already hurried to bring everyone delicious dishes. In fact, he came at the most opportune moment. Priest Frey suggested starting to eat while the food was hot. He even invited Iris to try his dish, but Theo tried to pull the initiative so that she would try him first. There was only one thing on her mind. She would never go anywhere with the three of them again. Grace continued to look at Iris, seeing how the boys were fighting for her attention. Our heroine suggested that Grace try the dish. Grace couldn't help but be irritated by his obsession with caring for others. But Iris denied it, so Grace looked at her angrily. And to some extent, she even envied the fact that she was behaving just like an angel. But Iris understood this mockery. Because her beloved Grace pays too much attention to her, she didn't react. She just thanked her for thinking that way. Theo and Priest Frey simultaneously shouted that there were no children as beautiful as her in the orphanage. Iris decided not to engage in further dialogue and simply enjoy the delicious food. Well, at some point, she heard from Grace that they were right, and maybe she really was an angel. After all, light hair and blue eyes like hers are quite rare to find. These words made her nervous, because if she thought she looked like an angel, then there was a problem. There is a possibility that she sees Theo as a demon instead. Grace even asked how she was doing, since it was quite a rare hair color. She believes that some may even steal it or try to cut it off and sell it. Theo didn't like what Grace said, so he reacted violently towards her. But she decided to get out of this situation by saying that she was just worried about her, and if she were in her place, she would be scared. When Iris confirmed that she might actually be worried, Theo calmed down. Frey decided to suggest that Iris tell Theo everything, but she did not understand what he was talking about. But he doesn't want to keep silent, because he is her best friend, and she will have to tell him anyway. At that moment, Iris had the thought that she really wanted to hit him. Theo seems to understand what he wanted to tell, but he feels sorry because he knows that Iris will never leave him. She will never leave him or go with him, no matter how much he wants to. And no matter what he does, no matter how nicely he communicates, she will never leave him alone. Tears appeared in the eyes of Priest Frey, and there was a clear expression of sadness on his face. Iris turned away from him, because she was truly sorry that everything was like this. They went home, and Priest Frey came out first. And after him, Iris and Theo, everyone was silent. But Iris broke the silence by saying that she and Theo needed to talk later. Our heroine ran after Priest Frey to talk, but when he turned around, she saw him crying. The first thing she wanted to do was apologize to him for not being able to be a family. But Priest Frey did not answer. He only hugged her warmly. He was upset by the fact that she really wouldn't become his family. Iris admitted that the idea of becoming a family makes her happy, and she will stay with Theo until he can live on his own. But if he really thinks of her as family, she would like to be a part of it one day. She asked only one thing, that he answer the question of why he was looking for her. Once he asked a priest what the meaning of his existence in this world was, and in response, he received that he was born with an important destiny, and here he is to fulfill it. His destiny is to find a goddess living somewhere. He heard about it constantly, and only faith was his only comfort. And one day, he felt the presence of a living goddess in the shelter. He only saw himself as an ordinary tool, a shell created only for the sake of searching. But the sight of this goddess was so unearthly, he could not even imagine. And when he saw her, there was no doubt in his mind that she must be in the temple. Frey was able to escape his dark past, in which the weight of his debt had once already broken him. When he was near her, he felt more alive than anyone else. But relationships that were based on purpose and intention were doomed to fall apart sooner or later. He had just begun to think about the possible dream of living the rest of his life with a living goddess. Priest Frey realized that he could not escape this fate, no matter how hard he tried. But he told Iris that he couldn't answer her that question. Then, at that moment, she seemed to become disappointed. Priest Frey only asked for forgiveness and said goodbye to Iris. He turned away abruptly and walked away. Iris stood and watched him walk away forever. She even caught herself thinking that she shouldn't have asked him. Theo finally found Iris. He looked for her everywhere, and the first question was whether she was right to want to believe him, and to such an extent that he makes such a sad face. But what confused him most was that he didn't tell her anything. Then she decided to tell Theo. She thought that if he knew, she would be able to believe without any doubts. According to her, our hero realized that he had not answered her. Theo took Iris's hand to sit down on the bench and talk. They didn't even know about his existence. Theo suggested to forget about him, but it was very disappointing that everything happened exactly this way. And she can't just forget someone she's already met. Theo asked her not to cry, because he knows that things are hard now. But everything will go as it should. Iris changed a lot after she met this man. She used to be cheerful and happy and sociable, but after he appeared, he didn't see a smile on her face at all. All he did was walk away and leave her to worry. He only said everything to gain her trust, and in the end, he couldn't even care. But Iris didn't understand how Theo could be so sure that Frey was such a person. Then, he told her that when she went out for ink and he was left alone with him, something strange happened. Frey can sense divine power, which means he can sense the opposite as well. And the fact that the two of them are called angel and demon is not just because of their appearance. He feels everything. After all, a divine being who shouldn't be near Theo, and he came to guide her on the right path. Frey mocked him, saying that Iris was unknowingly using her divine power. Because Theo spends every day with her, he simply doesn't notice it. Frey asked him to stay away from Iris, because in the end, he was destined to be destroyed by her. Theo initially wanted to tell her about it, but he didn't want to ruin his relationship with Frey. And the priest was sure that Theo would not be able to do this. Theo whispered in her ear that it was all because she brought the demon into the light. And he came to take her away from him. Our heroine simply couldn't believe what she heard. And it was precisely the poets who caused the priest to be unable to tell her the truth. Iris was puzzled as to how he could tell him the purpose of his visit. She didn't even understand how she could be angry at what had already happened. Given Frey's work, she wasn't surprised that he said he was going to destroy the demon. Iris blamed herself for being too naive and not noticing that Frey saw Theo as nothing more than a demon. Even though everyone saw Theo as a demon, Iris hoped that Frey would be different. Because he was a priest, she only apologized that he had to listen to such terrible things. But she had nothing to apologize for, because she had also been deceived. But Iris doesn't think she can hate him. After all, it is possible to feel resentment only towards something that really means something. Theo didn't like the fact that despite all the terrible things he said about him, she wasn't angry with him. Annalise decided that she would think about how he had let her down for no apparent reason. But people can change or even play a double game, because he can also continue to mock him. Theo just doesn't want Iris's smile to disappear, because he values it very much. But circumstances will only continue to change, and they will have no choice but to give in to them. But Iris's feelings for Theo will never change. Then Theo wondered what would happen if he really did transform into a demon. After all, she cannot be sure that she will continue to experience the same feelings towards our hero. Winter had come, 4 years had already passed, and he and Theo were 18 years old. Their ambitious plan to enter the academy was put on hold due to the departure of the priest. After he left, she never heard from him again. But our heroine was no longer bothered by this, because she and Theo were always together. Iris decided to remind Theo that she had been his bodyguard for the past 4 years. After all, he was worried then that the priest might return and destroy him. And since then, she has always been there and protected from any danger. Then Theo laughed out loud, as if he thought his girlfriend couldn't protect him. Theo began to tease her by comparing the difference in their heights. However, he sincerely thanked her for looking after him all the time. And in any case, she will also continue to protect him from any danger. Then she sat down and pouted, not intending to listen to his nonsense. But then she quickly jumped up and asked him to remember what she would tell him. Theo smiled sweetly, waiting for more recommendations. She asked to never go out alone and always be with someone. But Theo also understood that if he killed him, he would try to convey this to the whole world. But Iris will do everything she can to prevent this. She also asked him to avoid dark and empty places, and she asked him not to mind if she would follow him just like before. Thanks to Iris's big, clever words, Theo expanded his vocabulary. Iris knew that if he wanted to be completely safe, he would have to come to terms with it. She also suggested that he read as many new books as possible, as this would broaden his worldview. Theo doubted that Arias would be able to keep an eye on him all the time. Before he could add anything, his gaze fell to the side. Iris immediately glanced back. She saw Grace approaching straight towards them. Grace seemed to like the way Iris responded to her. Iris knew it was quite difficult to keep track of. That's why I decided to show her something that would help her with this. She rummaged in her pocket to get something out, and she pulled out a monocular tracking device. Iris told him what it was, and also said that she borrowed it from Evelyn. Either way, she's going to use it to keep an eye on him. But Theo didn't really believe that this could change anything. From this very day, Iris will monitor him with the help of this device. Theo wished her luck, waved and walked away. He walked past Grace without paying much attention, and when she said hello, he remained silent. Iris noticed that Theo was walking faster than usual on purpose. Our heroine didn't like that he perceived it all as a game, so she ran after him and gave Grace a cold greeting. But it's not surprising that she didn't like it much. Evelyn had already heard that Iris was stalking Theo and running after him everywhere, but then she noticed that they were about to leave. So I asked my friend to talk later because she was busy. But for some reason, Evelyn ran after her. After Iris borrows her monocular, she is unable to enter entries into her diary, so she asked Iris to join her. She does not collect information with malicious intent. She even offered to look at the recordings. Iris braked sharply, because there was a feeling that this was not a diary, but a report. But Evelyn was still wondering why she was following Theo. She replied to protect him. Evelyn offered to take part in this, because she would be able to conduct an investigation and help her friend. Theo and Grace walked from one place to another, but did nothing but chat. Iris felt like Grace was trying to get him to do something. As a bodyguard, she kept a close eye on him. Theo even admitted that he was starting to feel embarrassed around her. In fact, he says this for a reason. Grace interrupted their conversation because she needed to talk to Theo, so she rushed right next to her towards him. She grabbed his hand and led him along. And how glad Iris is that she has a tool that allows her to spy from a distance. Evelyn had a hunch that Grace wasn't really in love with him. It seems that she wants a pet demon for herself, and therefore gets closer to him. After all, when Iris became friends with Theo, everyone thought that she had tamed the demon. Grace acted like she was in love with him from the very first day they met. The only option that came to mind in Iris's mind was that she was a demon worshipper, and she thought that such people had long since disappeared. And Iris is too smart to believe all this. Our heroine stood up and said that she urgently needed to go. She immediately went to the library to find history books. Although Evelyn's theories were a bit far-fetched and silly, Iris was afraid that this might be one of those rare cases. If this is true, then it turns out that she was under quite a negative influence from adults. But this is just an assumption. She shouldn't be prejudiced against Grace. In the morning, Iris met Theo, and as usual, we went to the restroom. After all, even though the priest has left them, they should not give up their studies. And Grace, as usual, appeared out of nowhere, right where they were going. Then Iris greeted her. She ran to Theo and asked her to go with him to the library. She wanted to go just the two of them, but Theo refused her. He said firmly and decisively that he was going to study with Iris and asked to leave them alone. Then Grace looked at our heroine as if she should leave. Before, she would ask permission, but now every time she just tries to take it away. But Iris understood that she was only a child, although sometimes she regretted that she forced Theo to be friends with her. Grace ran to hug him, but he asked her to leave him alone. She begged him to stay with her today, but he asked her to find another pastime. Then she began to pout, because she really wanted to show him something. At this point, Iris decided to leave them, and said that she would study somewhere else. When she was about to leave, Theo grabbed her hand because he wanted her to stay. But Iris explained that she was just trying to give the two of them some alone time, after which he said that he wanted to study with her and not spend time with Grace because he promised to study together, and she was getting in the way. He pulled his hand away and asked her again not to bother him and to go away. Iris doesn't like Grace, but seeing her disappointed face makes her feel uneasy, so she decided to invite her to go with them. But Grace refused because she wants to be alone with Theo. Iris didn't understand why she was even worried about this girl. When Grace walked into the room with them, the first thing she noticed was how squalid the place was. But this was only because very few people went to study in this room. Theo didn't care at all about the room. What mattered to him was that he was next to Iris. Grace took the book from Theo and began to look at the pages. She found it funny that they were learning basic knowledge. Iris did not remain silent. She explained that in the orphanage, they have little opportunity to learn even something like this, and some children do not even know how to read and write. Grace doesn't think that living in a shelter is an excuse for her own stupidity. Grace had a rather strange reaction, but that was not what Iris meant at all. Theo got tired of these quarrels, got angry, hit the table and suggested starting the lesson. Grace had no choice but to sit next to Iris and glare at her. A few hours later, Iris decided to stretch because she felt tension throughout her body. Since they had been studying for a long time, our heroine suggested that Theo have lunch. But then Grace grabbed Theo's hand, hinting that it was now her turn to spend time with Theo, and she could have lunch with someone else. Her drive was so impressive that Iris was already determined to give in to Grace. Grace also promised that they wouldn't go far. Theo didn't understand where the desire to keep an eye on him had disappeared. So he stood up abruptly and said that she had promised him to keep an eye on him on a permanent basis. This meant that Iris shouldn't leave him alone. Theo confidently took Iris's hand and headed towards the exit. Then, Grace began to say in a rage that this was unfair and dishonest. As a result, they all ended up in the dining room together, which didn't make Grace very happy. Theo always spoiled Iris with all sorts of delicious things, and this time was no exception. Then Grace didn't lose her composure and asked him to treat her too. But he coldly and directly replied that she had her own food. Theo didn't understand why he had to give his precious sausage to her. Iris and Theo continued eating, not paying any attention to Grace, which made her extremely angry. For Iris, it was the most uncomfortable lunch ever. As she walked down the corridor, her hand was suddenly grabbed. It was Grace, wondering how she did it. After all, she became Mrs. Theo, which irritated her greatly. Iris even turned pale from this question, because she saw Theo only as her friend. Grace began to beg her to reveal all the secrets of her ability to control him, and she was very upset that Iris was having more fun with him than she was, because now it was her turn. Our heroine began to defend Theo, because she never perceived him or compared him to a thing. An argument broke out between the girls, and each defended her point of view. But Grace was just trying to get something across to her. Before she had time to say anything or explain herself, Theo appeared on the horizon. Iris jerked her hand away, not sparing any more conversation with her. Theo didn't have time to understand anything before Iris grabbed him and dragged him along with her. She just said that she just heard something rather strange. Theo began to get indignant because he was wildly irritated by Grace's constant interference. But Iris didn't want to discuss anything. She just wanted to leave. Grace looked at them with displeasure, as if she was ready to incinerate them. After this situation, Iris slept very poorly. She could not stop thinking about their conversation. After all, for a long time, she thought that Grace was simply in love with Theo. But she was very wrong, and Grace just wants to take possession of him. Iris scolded herself for not noticing it sooner, and as usual, she began to bite her lip, showing that she was worried. Theo could see that something was bothering her, because she had been sitting in this state for quite a long time. But Iris decided to lie, explaining that she was worried about the entrance exam. She couldn't help but ask him directly how he felt about Grace, since he sincerely didn't want them to be friends. Theo replied that he had gotten used to her presence, even though she was annoying. Iris even felt a little better, because the answer almost satisfied her. In fact, Theo was only friends with Grace because Iris wanted him to be, so he tries to be nice to her, and our heroine is glad to hear it. After saying goodbye to Theo, Iris went to find Grace to talk to her as soon as possible. But all her searches were in vain. She was nowhere to be found. When Iris saw the guys walking towards her, She decided to ask them if they had seen her, but they just looked at her with incomprehension. None of them even knew the girl she was looking for. Iris tried to explain and describe her, adding that she often followed Theo, but they never saw her, so they just went on about their business. And then, Iris thought, because none of the children knew who Grace was. Iris was brought out of her thoughts when she heard her voice. After all, what is she doing in a dark corridor all alone? She immediately became curious as to why Iris was looking for her. But our heroine didn't expect that Grace knew they were looking for her. She looked at Iris the way stately people usually look at peasants. If you think about it, she was always elegant, as if she had been taught etiquette since childhood. And now Iris realized that Grace had the aura of a noble person. Grace has been trying to act like an orphan the whole time, and she is also disappointed that Iris didn't get it right from the start. Our heroine was confused, because what could such a girl be doing in this place when she had everything? Grace answered her directly. She was here to take the demon for herself. She could have asked her father to pick him up in no time, but she came in person. Grace also asked to pass Theo on to her, because if Iris tells him to, he will obey. Iris's face was filled with anger. After all, what right did she have to call her friend a demon? And even if Theo is hers, she is not going to give him up. Then Grace started making threats. She doesn't intend to tolerate such a tone towards her. But Iris is no slouch herself. She was extremely persuasive and asked her in a friendly manner to stay away from him, after which she turned around and walked away. But this won't stop Grace, because in her head, she already had a clear plan on how to take Theo. But the last thing she wanted was to ask her father for help. After all, they had an agreement. If she caught him herself, then his father would give him to her. He said this with complete seriousness, but in reality, he didn't really believe that she would succeed. Encouraged and confident, Grace expected to handle this task easily. The Miller house has worshipped demons for hundreds of years, hoping to gain immortality. Grace's father was obsessed with finding demons, even if it meant scouring the entire empire. As a result, strange demon worshippers began to gather in his house. He greeted everyone with a smile on his face. Due to this environment, Grace grew up thinking that making deals with demons was mandatory. Grace is cunning. She bribed the director and got full access to the shelter. But then she faced a problem that she did not expect. Let's remember their first meeting, when Iris left them alone. That day, Grace immediately asked Theo if he was a demon or not. He only pretended not to understand what she was talking about, but Grace was confident in her words. Then Theo wondered what would happen if he really was a demon. Grace then explained that she wanted to make a deal with him, and if he still doesn't have a master, then she's ready to go for it. Even if he doesn't have a master, he will never be a piece of dirt like Grace. It seemed she realized that he already had a master. Catching Theo's gaze, she looked at our heroine and couldn't believe her eyes that it was Iris. Despite Grace's lamentations, Theo ignored her completely. On this day, for the first time, she felt so humiliated. And Theo, who had been quite tame with Iris, made Grace experience failure for the first time with his refusal. She knew it would be difficult to tame the demon, but she didn't think it would be that difficult. And something happened. He came up to her and said that he treats her like a person, only because his girlfriend wants it. It was surprising that Theo, who had looked at her with disdain a few minutes ago, returned only because he was asked. Grace liked the fact that the demons were so loyal to their masters. She realized that she couldn't just give up. Theo did everything to create the appearance of their friendship and reconciliation. Grace laughed and then made an unfortunate joke at Iris's expense, after which Theo asked her to watch her words if she wanted to live. With tears in her eyes from laughter, she shook his hand and agreed. From that day on, Grace became even more obsessed and did everything to get him. But only today, she realized that it was her illusion. Iris wasn't as good as Grace initially thought. She also did everything to protect her demon from her. Theo couldn't be possessed. Her assumption was that Iris simply didn't see him as a demon. She also thought that their souls had made a contract without their knowledge. While Grace stood there in thought, someone approached her from behind. It was Priest Frey, who apparently wanted to talk to her about something. Grace didn't understand his appearance at the shelter. He only asked to stay away from Iris, and if he listened, then the temple would finally turn its back on their home. Grace felt uncomfortable during the conversation. Frey promised that he would create big problems for her family. Grace was angry because for some reason everyone was trying to protect Iris, but Frey only protected her because it was his duty. Grace gritted her teeth and pretended to understand him. After he broke the trust between him and Iris, Frey kept an eye on her every day. He would also be curious as to why Grace spends all her time with Theo. Frey immediately realized who Grace really was. It didn't take him long. He also saw a symbol on the cart that brought her to and from the orphanage. It is the symbol of the Miller house, a family of demon worshippers who have always been at odds with their temple. Frey blamed himself, because Duke Miller had learned that there was a demon in the orphanage when he was watching them, the priests. He also observed Grace's conversations with Iris quite often. He constantly heard Iris defending her childhood friend. Frey knows how much Iris cares about Theo, and she will do anything to protect him, which could lead to trouble. For Duke Miller, getting rid of some simple girl, especially one who is known as a living goddess, would be a piece of cake. Even at the risk of revealing Iris's secret, he decides to make sure they don't harm her at any cost. So, in their last meeting, he made it clear that she should stay away from Iris. In the morning, our heroine was digging through her food, thinking about something. She dreamed again that she was sent to the noble's estate and tortured there. Theo noticed all her worries, so he took the initiative and asked her. But she, as usual, said that everything was fine and nothing had happened. She looked around too often, which Theo also noticed. As soon as her gaze fell on Grace, she tensed. She instantly grabbed Theo's hand and said that they needed to leave. They didn't even have time to get dressed and ran out into the cold frost. Theo had already begged her to tell him what was really going on. But Iris was hesitant about telling her friend what Grace had said yesterday. But she decided to lie and replied that she was simply practicing improving her reflexes to protect him. After all, anything can happen at any moment, and this is their training. It was quite cold outside, so she suggested going back inside. Theo took his scarf because he noticed that Iris was very cold. He is too worried that she will catch a cold and not recover soon. While studying the material, Theo is worried about the exam because it is just around the corner. This is the last winter, and after it, they will find out whether they were accepted to the academy. Theo had already asked her once what she would do if only one was accepted into the academy, and then Iris didn't answer anything. And he was right. She really didn't tell him anything. She just smiled and simply suggested that they keep trying until they were old enough to leave the orphanage. If only Theo could pass the exam, she would insist on his admission. But she knows he won't listen to her. But Theo was worried about what would happen if one continued to fail and the other succeeded. Iris decided to deal with it when the time came. Theo just looked at her sweetly and nodded his head. Iris noticed Grace walking past her office again. She immediately started collecting books, and Theo again did not understand what was going on. Iris grabbed him and pulled him along with her. She also promised to tell him everything later. Running out into the street, they sat down on the very first bench they saw. Theo assumed that she had done something bad to Grace. After all, she began to constantly avoid her. Iris just turned away a little, because she didn't really want to explain anything right now. Then Theo took her cheeks to look into her eyes. But Iris didn't understand what she should tell him. She would like him to stay away from her, and she realizes that she is contradicting what she told him earlier. She is also worried that he will be angry with her for not being able to make a decision. Our hero blushed after hearing these words. He also asked why she wanted him to stay away from her, but he did not receive a clear answer. So turning to her, he hugged her sharply. Iris didn't understand this reaction, but Theo seemed somehow happy, and he won't do anything she doesn't want him to do. He decided that he would simply tell her that they would no longer communicate. Our hero asked to let him figure it out himself and asked to wait. He seemed to know what was bothering her and also added that she shouldn't worry. Theo knows that Grace doesn't see him as a person. After all, she just wants to make a contract with him because she thinks he's a demon. Theo already knew about Grace's true intentions, and this made our heroine's heart clench. He doesn't blame Iris because he just ignored her, because he doesn't care what she does. Every time, she thought about what she had done, and it was as if she was torn apart. But Iris blamed herself, because she understood how painful it was for him to endure such treatment, and she didn't even think that all her actions aimed at helping could actually harm him. Theo reminded her of what she said, that even if everyone started calling him a demon, she would continue to call him by his name. He doesn't care what others say when she's around him. The child who had previously withdrawn into himself became strong enough to comfort her. Iris will always be by his side no matter what happens, and that's all Theo needs. Our heroine sat on a bench in full anticipation of her friend's return. It had been a long time since he had gone to talk to Grace. She even had the thought that Grace had kidnapped him. After a while, she decided to walk around and check. After all, she can't believe that he was kidnapped. Walking a little further, I noticed Grace and Theo, who were standing nearby and talking. To avoid being noticed, she decided to hide behind a tree. Hearing what Theo was saying, she froze, because it was as if he was confirming that he was a demon. Their conversation continued, and Theo decided to clarify. If Grace doesn't leave him alone, he doesn't even know what he'll do to her. He asked to stop being a nuisance and behave appropriately. At that moment, Grace's gaze fell to the side, and she noticed Iris standing there. Our heroine caught his gaze and decided to leave. Theo was pretty harsh with her, but she's sure it was necessary. She also remembered William talking about unusual powers, but she must trust her friend and just wait. Hearing footsteps, she saw Theo walking towards her. She waved her hand at him happily. Iris hopes he doesn't find out that she followed him and overheard the conversation. Theo asked why she waited for him outside and didn't go into the house, because it was too cold. She decided to answer that she was very worried about how their conversation would go. He suggested that they go back inside because she would get hypothermia. A few days later, Haley's teacher was surprised that Iris wanted to take the academic entrance exam. Teacher Haley is surprised that her student chose such a difficult path. She added that children's history books and academic works hardly explain anything. She was afraid that she might not understand what the content of these books was about, and she added that these books are not ideal for the exam. Haley's teacher decided to check if she was sure she wanted to take the exam, to which she replied that they worked very hard and had basic knowledge. Haley knows that the academy gives everyone a chance to pass the exam. It is essentially a school for nobles, and she must understand what that means. After all, anyone can write the exam, but not everyone without the proper education can pass it. In this place, everyone likes to show the image of the unification of nobles and commoners, but in reality, everything is not so rosy. But Iris still wants to try, because it's better than doing nothing. Teacher Haley reminded them that they didn't have much time left, as spring was coming soon. She asked Iris to come after lunch because they had a lot of work. Haley ran out of the office to buy a textbook before it was too late, thereby showing that she wanted to help her with her studies. Iris was absolutely overjoyed as she was getting back on track with her studies. It was as if the teacher was trying to scare her into giving in, so she didn't expect her to come back with all the books. When she went outside, she saw a ball lying on the floor and the kids being asked to kick it with them. It was William, and he didn't expect to meet his old friend now. He asked her to kick the ball for him in a disgruntled voice. And then I stood there waiting, not understanding what was about to happen. Iris roughly passed the ball to one of his friends, after which she walked up to William and looked at him suspiciously. And then she looked at him with interest and asked him to step aside and talk. The moment they were alone, he blushed. It was all awkward for him, because she had brought him to a quiet and deserted place. Whatever she was about to say, he was ready to listen to her. She didn't understand what was going through his head, but it wasn't what he was clearly thinking. Iris reminded him of what he had said about Theo a few years ago, about unusual powers. This is all with my own eyes. If she had been there, they would have stopped being friends. She asked me to hurry up and tell her everything. William was a little tense, but willing to share what happened that day. This was the first time William and Theo met. He was only 6 years old, much younger than he is now, and he was heading to the toilet. It seemed as if a ghost could jump out at any second. Imagine his surprise when he saw a guy standing by the window at such a late hour. He carefully approached him and, patting him on the back, called out to him and asked what he was doing. It even seemed to him that he was sleeping standing up. But when Theo turned around, he saw scarlet, like blood in his eyes. William gasped and shouted that there was a monster in the hallway. Out of fear, he even fell to the floor and asked this demon to move away from him, go back to where he came from, because there is no place for such people in the shelter. Through his tears, he tried to look at his face more closely. Theo just stood and watched. His gaze seemed to be fixed on William. A strange energy emanated from him, and there was madness in his eyes. Dark smoke enveloped William's body, the first time he had seen anything like this, after which he fell down and foam began to flow from his mouth. Because of the noise, the boys and the director ran out into the corridor. William was found in the hallway, unconscious, and with his pants wrapped in bandages. That day was firmly imprinted in his mind, and he would never forget what happened. From that day on, he had nightmares, waking up in a wet bed. It took him many years to stop thinking about it, but a few years later, they met Theo again at the shelter. The first thought that came to his mind was that the demon had come back for him. He started telling all the kids that there was a demon named Theo in the orphanage. He also shared with them the incident that happened to him that night, after which everyone was convinced that Theo really was a demon. William was hinting that she should understand that she couldn't trust him, because he could harm her too. And Iris then realized that if he had suffered from it for so long, then it couldn't be a lie. She thanked him for the story and said goodbye. She was scared that her childhood friend might actually be a demon. When she found Theo, she told him the wonderful news that teacher Haley would help them prepare for the exams. He immediately noticed that she looked too excited. In fact, it's hard for her to even look him in the eye after what she heard. A book she once read said that in his past life, he was persecuted for being a demon, and because of that, he became a murderer. But she knows she must trust Theo and protect him. The next day, teacher Haley brought a huge number of textbooks. They need to study at least half of these books before the Goddess Day. Such a large number of books made Iris very excited. Teacher Haley wasn't very happy about this, because she didn't see any problem in learning them. After several hours of studying, my head was spinning. Haley asked to stop whining and continue studying because she would check everything. It was no surprise that with Frey, everything was much easier to grasp, since this was the base. Now I understand why Grace laughed at them. An hour later, the teacher took the material away to check it. Iris noticed that Theo's answers were longer than hers. She can't even imagine how difficult it was for him, because he is younger. She was comforted by the fact that they could not learn at their own pace. But Theo just smiled sweetly, making Iris tense up, after which she ruffled his hair, as if encouraging him. Suddenly, her teacher, Haley, called her. She was worried that she had done a very poor job of the task she had been given. And yes, she really should study very hard. She made a large number of mistakes in the test, only 4 correct answers out of 13. Just when Iris tried to tell him about the exam and how she wouldn't succeed, Theo gave her a flick on the face. He asked her not to be so pessimistic, because it was not like her, and also reminded her of her words that even if she failed the exam, she would not give up. Iris smiled and confirmed these words. A whole month passed, and on a February night, they went out into the street. To Iris, the whole situation looked rather gloomy. She also hurried Theo, because the hostel would soon close. He decided to smile and said he was coming. Every time she tried to rush him. At some point, she heard a crunch in the trees and turned around sharply. The first assumption was that an animal had gotten onto the territory of the orphanage, but perhaps she just imagined something too much. Iris had already started waving her arms, because her friend's pace was completely unsatisfactory. Two looked at Iris with frightened eyes, but she didn't understand what was happening and what he was talking about. Iris didn't have time to turn around before someone unknown threw a bag over her head. When our heroine woke up, she tried to look around, but she couldn't do anything because her hands were tied. She immediately realized that she had been kidnapped. Grace stood opposite with her guards. She waited a long time for her to wake up. I wasn't surprised that this girl was crazy. Considering the situation, she seemed too calm. Grace seemed to be enjoying the whole game. She felt like Iris was just having fun and making fun of her. She began to deny everything, because she was not capable of such nasty things. But Grace didn't believe a single word she said, because she initially asked to be friends, and then started threatening through him. But in reality, Iris was just asking to stay away from her. She also doesn't intend to feel sorry for her for this. If she had known from the start that she had something in mind for him, she would never have allowed Theo to be friends with someone like her. Grace is angry because she thinks Iris is playing the innocent little lamb. Iris is not his mistress. She is his friend, and she does not believe that he is a demon. Then she decided to show her how to awaken the demon inside him. Grace's family, the Millers, had been hunting demons for generations, and her father had never been wrong. She decides to take Theo to her father, and he will also grab Iris so that she can see the summoning ritual with her own eyes, and will be a sacrifice in order to make a deal. And her father will gain even more power with her sacrifice, and Grace will gain immense respect for bringing both the demon and the sacrifice. Iris begged them to let her go, but no one listened to her. Grace just screamed angrily not to resist if she wanted to live. She gave instructions to her servants that they were returning home and taking her with them. They got her to her feet to take her to the carriage. At that moment, a male voice was heard. It was Priest Frey. He had once warned her not to touch Iris. With such reckless actions, she will turn the temple against her entire family. But she doesn't believe that the temple will stand against them because of some orphan. She asked him to leave because she didn't want him to suffer because of her. Grace agreed with her captive, because if he really didn't want to get hurt, then he'd better leave. But Frey wouldn't lie to protect her, just because she was his friend. If she harms Iris in any way, their family will be destroyed. He also said that she could continue if she was afraid of the consequences. It seems that she understood everything. The temple is obliged to protect this girl. Grace laughed out loud, because now everything made some sense. Frey repeated again that she should leave Iris alone. But she is not afraid of threats from the temple. Frey was surrounded by Grace's servants, hinting that he had no choice but to leave them. If Grace brings the goddess to her home, the demon will come to her himself, and she cannot miss such a chance. At that moment, everything in Iris's head was mixed up. But it looks like Frey has no other choice. Iris once had a feeling that she could be a goddess, but she strongly resisted and ignored it. She knew that if she accepted her true face, who can no longer live with Theo as before. "I'm here for you, Iris," came a voice that seemed to pull her out of her thoughts. Theo stood and looked at her, and a dark force flickered around him. Iris quickly ran towards him. The first question that worried her was whether he was okay. Theo just looked at her, not making a single sound. "Your face looks so haggard after so many years," he said. But it was as if it wasn't her friend's voice. He doesn't understand how they dared to touch her inviolable body. Theo placed his hand on her cheek. Iris felt claws. "Demon," Grace whispered, breaking the silence. She seemed to have gone mad, because the demon had finally awakened. Grace was 100% sure that Theo was a demon. Frey tried to pull Iris towards him, telling her that she needed to stay away from him. He also asked her not to attract his attention, otherwise she would get hurt. But all Iris wanted was to help her friend. Theo grabbed Grace by the neck and lifted her up, telling her to stay away and behave properly. He also reminded her that if she touched Iris again, he would kill her. A crowd of servants ran towards them with fists and knives. Frey tried to stop Iris from doing something stupid, but she kept screaming his name. At this point, the magic intensified. Theo would not stand on ceremony. With his strength, he grabbed each man by the throat, after which they all began to burn alive. Iris couldn't watch all this. She came closer and asked him to stop. Frey, worried, shouted at Iris not to come closer. The magic was so strong that it blinded the priest. Theo was completely confident in his abilities. He was not ready to retreat. But something went wrong. He saw Iris in front of him. With tears in her eyes, she extended her hand, asking him to come back. She put her hand on his cheek to bring him to his senses. The magic began to dissipate. Theo began to regain consciousness. His hand weakened, and Grace fell to the ground. Theo landed on his knees in complete regret for what he had done. Priest Frey tried to pull her away from him, but she pushed him away and asked him to stay away from her. Then, he asked her to think about why this demon started to haunt her in the first place. It seemed like Frey was the only one with ulterior motives. It doesn't matter to her how eloquently he lies to her. She will never go with him. And even if Theo is a demon, she would rather die at his hands than remain a prisoner in the temple forever. Theo heard a voice telling him to take revenge on anyone who took Iris. He's worried that he's actually turning into him. Iris told him that she was considered a goddess, and that it seemed like some kind of joke to her. They were called goddess and demon simply because of the way they look. But now they are said to be true. But they are just kids who want a normal life. And Iris will not stop trusting him, because she does not care whether he is a demon or not. They will always be together. It was a sleepless night. Iris couldn't sleep for a long time. The thought that Theo was a demon and she was a goddess did not give her any peace. She heard that goddesses must live in the temple their entire lives. The only thing it meant was that she would remain there forever under protection. This is not the life she wants. She just needs to be with Theo. Everything didn't go the way she wanted in her last life. And in the new one, everything is going in the same place. After our heroine fell asleep, she found herself in a dream she didn't want to be in. She returned to the peacefulness of this place she had grown accustomed to, but now it seemed suffocating. A beautiful goddess descended from heaven to earth. She greeted our heroine with all the warmth and a smile, and landed right in front of her. They were frighteningly similar. In front of her stood the goddess Lily, about whom they had been talking all the time. "Why are you here?" the goddess asked Iris. She was just curious about what they wanted from her and what she should do. As it turned out, the goddess was her past life, and they have gone through this cycle countless times, bearing the consequences of their past choices. Iris will follow the same path. It may be different, but the outcome will remain the same. Our heroine will never give up, but this will come to an end someday. The goddess Lily leaned over and kissed our heroine on the forehead. The sun's rays covered Iris's face, and she woke up from such bright light. After she slept, she felt much better. The day before the entrance exam to the academy arrived, Haley praised them for their discipline. They have worked hard enough that they can rest. Theo will hesitantly thank the teacher for everything, and then the teacher stroked his head and said that he would succeed. Iris considered her their savior, but she can only say that after she passes the exam. Iris was warmed by the thought that everything would be decided tomorrow. Haley told them to go to bed early, but it seems like they'll be too worried. Theo promised that he would always be with her. That it happened that way they needed to pass the exam successfully. Iris agreed, and even suggested a pinky swear. Evelyn immediately ran up and looked for them for quite a long time. She took them by the hands and led them along. Evelyn seemed to glow, because she wanted to show them something. Iris followed her without understanding. There were little children standing in front who were very happy to see her. Evelyn immediately asked about the entrance exam to the academy, and she reminded her of her observation skills and information-gathering skills. So they prepared a small party to wish them success in the exam. Each child came up and gave a small gift, and also there were pleasant wishes directed their way. Iris thanked each of the boys. She hugged everyone and said that she would never forget them. It was time for bed, and Evelyn decided to keep her company. Iris didn't understand what had come over her today. She only encouraged her friend that even if she passed the entrance exam, she would not leave right away. But Evelyn is worried that she might leave earlier than she plans. After all, Priest Frey told her that she would leave immediately after the exam. She just wanted to say goodbye to her in advance. It seems that the priest planned to take her to the temple after the exam, but she will make sure that everything does not go as smoothly as they all want. In the morning, Iris and Theo were met by Teacher Haley and the director of the orphanage. The director feels awkward sending them off alone, as she didn't expect the noble family to show up unexpectedly for a visit today. But she is glad that a priest will go with them as a guardian. A man entered the room. It was the head priest of the temple. He walked into the office and decided to introduce himself. His name is Gale. The principal asked them to take care of and monitor their students. To Iris, it all looked rather suspicious. As they walked, the priest suggested that they were quite close. This made Iris even more suspicious. But he's just curious. He's an old man and has a lot of free time. The carriage was moving quite quickly, as if it had no intention of stopping. Priest Gale held his hand in front of her, and she seemed to freeze. He always wondered if it was true that he always protected her when she was in danger. At that moment, Theo ran towards her, because she could have been hit by the carriage. He grabbed her in his arms and covered her with himself.